Through the Eyes of Another Pony, Equestria Daily Unrevised Version, Chapter 13, Gonna Love and Tolerate the Chapter Out of You. So I was having this awesome dream, right? Right. It involved the Starship Enterprise fighting off the Transformers, all of them, and Princess Celestia stepping out of Equestria telling the damn kids to get off her lawn before blasting everything out of the space with the rainbow shoop-de-whoop. I was awestruck at her shoop face, though I was afraid she might turn it on me. It was a chance I had to take if it meant basking in that awesome. I space galloped over to her and threw my hooves up in a cheer. "You're a beast!" I enthusiastically complimented her. "Why, thank you, Firewall," she replied with a smile, her face turning back into its usual regal form. "I know I'm amazing, but there's something else that I think you should know." My eyes expanded beyond what was natural and or healthy as I nodded eagerly. This pony had to know. Guys, it was important. "I know something," she murmured gently, her voice fearful and cautious as she looked about. She then beckoned me closer with a hoof, and I complied, turning my head a bit so that she could whisper. What happened next would forever chill me to the bone. I feel I should caution you. What you're about to read might just ruin your life. You were warned. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, and this is how it goes. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, and this is how it goes. I opened my eyes lazily as I wondered where the hell I was. Dark room, stone walls, fancy bed. Oh right, Canterlot. See, I'd been ordered by Goddess Almighty Luna to start sleeping in a bed like every pony else instead of outside. Naturally, my first reaction was to drag a bed outside. Lately, though, Luna has been magicking it right back to where I stole it from with me in it. Fairly certain there are laws against such forms of short-range foal napping. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, and this is how it goes. My next thought was to find out where that stupid music was coming from. If I had taken the time to think clearly, I would have figured it out without much effort. However, my brain was still loading up from the rate it was going. I could tell today was going to be a Vista Home Premium Day. I slowly rolled over to see a big happy grin plastered to an indigo alicorn. I blinked a few times before rolling back over, content to ignore. She would not be deterred, though. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, and this is how it goes. "Luna," I whimpered tiredly. "What time is it?" "Time for you to get up," she chirped before biting the covers and yanking them off. "No, it's not." I checked my internal clock. It was a half go-the-buck-to-sleep past nap time on this lovely day. To my dismay, she did not believe me. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves, every pony's nerves. I know a song that gets on every pony's nerves, and this is how it goes. Fine. I rolled off the bed and smacked onto the floor. There's a certain art to crashing into the floor as hard as possible without hurting yourself. I'm like the Leonardo da Vinci of that particular section of subculture. She walked around the bed and nudged at me. "Celestia is returning to Canterlot today. With Ponyville and Appaloosa back in order, she says she needs to set some things straight with us. I need you to get your game face on. I think she's going to try and get us to stop." "Dating?" I rolled over with a yawn before pushing myself up. She gave me a look as though I were dumbing things down. "Sounds so Fine, we're trolling. It's kinda like dating, only more painful. I smacked my lips a few times before walking to the closest window and opening it. I wished I hadn't, though. Celestia nearly killed me with that son of hers. After I adjusted to the light, I whipped out a Marlboro and lit up. Sorry, it was a good quarter-mile walk to the garden. Luna picked out one hell of a spire for me to crash in. "That sounds more appropriate," she said with a laugh, casting a spell to fan my smoke out of the window more effectively. I looked down at Canterlot's civilian sector, happy to see ponies moving about in it once more. It had been a couple of months since David and his packed ponies went into hiding, a couple of boring ones, mind you. It was, other than putting broken things back together, not much had been happening. Everything was so busy that I didn't even get to chill with friends. Up to this point, I was so freaking bored that I almost compared it to Earth. Almost. Still, I wasn't complaining. Things had been on the rise, and normalcy, meaning utopia, was starting to reassert itself. Crazy thing, though. Turns out there were quite a few other packed ponies. Luna was smart and had put the Sky Archons to interrogating the citizens with simple questions. Those that didn't answer them without wincing like they were getting their brains scrubbed with a scope sponge were put under lock and key. Most were pretty relieved, though. "Okay." I nodded before looking back at her with a sigh. "So we're going to get the talk. Hey, let me ask you something. Does it ever bother you? I mean, naturally, this ain't like elf and human. This is a pretty significant difference in races." "Nope." She smiled brightly at me before cantering over and pecking my neck. "I'm quite happy to break the rules." "'Cause I'm just saying, we get sent to the moon, I'm totally breaking up with you," I murmured sardonically with a wink. She hoofed me in the ribs. She violences me so much. "Ha! And who else would you be with on the moon, I wonder if Celestia would lighten my sentence in return for certain favors. Suggestive Firewall is suggestive. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. Her face got all red and blushy. It was just too adorable. The whole jaw-dropping thing was what sold it, though. Just suggesting such an idea was filling her with jealous rage, which I admit kinda made me feel all loved and wanted. Wait, is that why women do that? They talk about other guys so you get jealous and makes them feel desired? What nonsense is that? Nah, that's probably not it. It so is. You lay a hoof on my sister, and I will have 2 reasons to pull out pieces of you that are designed to stay put. She threatened with an intense glare. Fierce Luna is best Luna. I gave her a big smile, to which she magicked one of the pillows off the bed and utterly beat me with that sucker. It may have been a pillow, but I don't care what you say. It is going fast enough to break all American speed limits. It's gonna hurt. The result was me flat on my back, watching the room spin around. Wah! I sat back up and immediately checked my cigarette's integrity. Thankfully, all was well. Huzzah! She turned to leave, happy with the results of her abuse. I'll be sure to let Winter Sky know that you're up. That wasn't funny. No! I dived, catching her back hoof and shuddering in fear. That's crossing the line. You may wonder why I'm afraid of Winter Sky being aware of my being awake. Well, see, I sorta got in trouble several weeks back. This may come as a shock, but I get bored really easy. With every pony busy helping get things put back together, I didn't have awesome pony friends to occupy my awesome pony time. Now, you may be wondering why I wasn't helping out. The answer is they don't take me seriously enough to entrust me with any responsibility. Can't imagine why. I'm dependable. Oh, right, Winter Sky. Anyway, I caused some civil chaos after having a little too much cider and, well, let's just leave it at that. The result was Celestia ordering Winter Sky to keep me occupied. A job he takes just a little too much pleasure in. Actually, he takes way too much pleasure in it. preposterous amounts of pleasure. He makes me do things like run around the city, the whole damn thing, catch sky archons. He has a strange sense of humor. Fuel the big industrial-sized stoves for the cooks. It saves on the electric bill, he says. Hey, wait a second! Fight with him? I've got a better chance of landing a punch on Stormwing, okay? That's how one-sided it is. And whatever else he can think of. He loves it. His eyes lit up when he got the job. Me? Well, let's just say I like to stay on the silver lining, and getting into shape didn't suck. Just everything else about it. Now you know how it feels. She yanked her hoof out of my grasp and cackled as she dashed out of the room. That's our relationship, guys. We drive each other insane and then snuggle after we've got it all out of our systems. To be honest, she was the first girl to ever be able to put up with my insanity and dish it right back with the biggest smile. Me Gusta. I got up and quickly chased after her, aiming to stop the madness before the unthinkable happened. I'm not sure why I bothered as I cranked my fiery aura to try and catch up. She just teleported like the little hexing honey. Lols, portamento. She was. I didn't give up, however. Worst case scenario, this was a warm-up that would save me some time. The castle is quite lovely, really. All the white marble and gold trim is quite dazzling. Living in it for any amount of time makes you feel pretty awesome. The floor is always clean enough so you can check your hair in it. You may wonder why I'm describing it, especially since I hate breaking down visuals. The answer is simple. I tend to leave burn marks when I run with my aura ablazing all over the place, so yeah, not supposed to use it in the castle. Dashing through the halls like a one-horse open sleigh, I quickly burst into the central hall to see my worst fears confirmed. Winter Sky was standing at the bottom of the stairs, smiling up at me. She actually did it, I said to myself. I couldn't quite believe it at the time. She knows that I hate Winter Sky's little games. That little... Firewall, good to see you're awake. Earlier than usual, yet still amazingly late. You never cease to amaze me, he remarked with a cracking of his neck. Time to catch Lucky. You both need the exercise, and don't bother trying to bargain with her this time. If you catch her, she gets her wings bound for a few days. Luna appeared right beside him with a twinkling flash and got this look of shock on her face when she realized Winter Sky was already present. She looked back at me and shook her head, denying the silent accusation that I was already glaring into her. I needed no words to get my message of anger across. No, indeed, Firewall Prince Luna did not sell you out. I merely spotted her while she was going up to your room, therefore I knew you would be awake soon enough. He beckoned me with a hoof. Let's go, your day's not yet occupied. Right, continuing my Bleach training arc. That's what I called this whole endeavor. I mean, it just fit. There was a big bad out there of untold power, we can assume, that we would face off one day against, and I needed to be stronger or something. Yeah, anime training arcs didn't make much sense to me, so it only made sense that I found this kind of irritating. And by irritating, I mean downright pissing me off. The worst part? Screw Captain Winter Sky just didn't sound right, and likely was not a safe endeavor. As much as I wanted to tell him I'd take his orders when hell froze over, I knew deep down that he could probably make that happen shortly before sending me there for insubordination. He's just that scary for Pony. I did at least feel a little better knowing that Luna hadn't thrown me to the dogs and they simply found me on their own. Not that that was a great comfort, mind you. I hung my head and complied, dragging my hoofs along the way. Both Winter Sky and Celestia had made it clear that they were not be whining, harassing, or disobedience on my part. At first I was going to make an ass of myself. Big surprise, huh? But Luna told me that they would probably toss me into a Luna game on the first offense. Like I didn't have nightmares enough on my own without being forced to live in one of those. Don't worry, Princess, I'm fairly certain he'll go another day or two without expiring. Luna gave me a sympathetic smirk before shaking her head. Naturally, just keep in mind you can't keep him for long. Celestia wants to see us after she gets back. Wintersky gave a nod, smirking at me. Hear that? You're on a time limit. Penalties for failure. Great, Luna, just don't interact with him anymore. It gets me in trouble, I cried, my frame shaking with every whimper. We call that motivation where I come from. She snickered from behind a hoof whilst winking at me. Have fun. Right, fun. All that said, Wintersky and I walked out into the garden where Lucky was cutely fumbling around with her armor. She was specifically trying to do the buckles on one of her pony armor boot things. I guess you would call them sabatons or greaves or something. Holding it in her hooves as she yanked with her mouth at the close tie holding the buckles down. The knot was pretty tight though, and the only thing she managed to do was cause the boot to slip out of her hooves and smack her right in the nose. The diabetic induction scale was hitting an all-time high. Wow, I was amazed. I turned my head to glance at Wintersky. You must be so proud. I didn't train her, he said defensively, his impatience with her rather apparent. Poor Lucky, her name and cutie mark imply that she's lucky in all things. This is not the case. Lucky is lucky where semi-serious circumstances are concerned. She'll whip your flank in a board game, then turn around and trip over her own hair as she taunts you a second time. Her enemies will miss that headshot by millimeters, but only because she tripped on her own 4 hooves. You know, that doesn't work as well as 2 feet. Just before planting her face in a puddle of mud. I kid you not. Only Twilight is more adorable than her, and the margin isn't almost non-existent, in my opinion. The difference is that Twilight is just cute no matter what she does, whereas Lucky will trip and knock herself out on a boulder that she causes to roll down a hill and squash a rampaging hydra. No, seriously, that is the actual hypnosis of one of her escapades, as told by Stormwing. He claims that she's saved Equestria multiple times. To this day, I have trouble believing this. Lucky? Wintersky barked, causing her to jump to attention, sans one shoe. Same rules as before. However, this time you are grounded for 2 days, should you be caught. Her reaction told me that she had not been warned of the consequences. I grimaced a tad, my conscience reminding me that Wintersky could do much worse to her than he could do to me. Once again, nice guys finished last after receiving their beatings. Dude, seriously? I gave him a glance, shaking my head. I don't want to do that to her. Can't help you there. Catch the klutz. He lifted a hoof, pointing at her. Lucky blushed terribly at the snipe and looked down with a frown. I gave Wintersky a glare for his mean-spirited words, but he wasn't fazed. From what I understand, he's seen a lot of horrible things, like brutal reality stuff. Therefore, it's not a big surprise to discover that he's actually pretty jaded. Regardless, the result was that he wasn't worried about being abrasive if it helped make better Archons. As a human, I can relate to that kind of thinking, but seeing it in practice against ponies raised in paradise just didn't seem worth it. But she didn't take that bargain last time. She's not done anything wrong. I stuck my neck out, as I often do for others. I mean, yeah, she considered it, but it's not necessary that she be punished for it, right? Simply want to give her some motivation. He countered with a wing shrug of braggery. Stop stalling. What if I don't feel comfortable supporting that line of thinking? I glared at him even more, my righteous ire, yes, I have righteous ire, staring awake. Another taunting wing shrug. Then I guess you have a choice to make. I chuckled acidly and shook my head before turning around. Okay, that's easy. Don't worry, Lucky, you're in no danger. I'll take whatever lashing Sky's handing out today. What the worst it could be anyway? Oh dear God, not pony torture. It might cute me into a coma. Sky didn't seem very happy with my dismissal for a second. I thought he was going to whip my flank so hard that I would have new appreciation of the concept of pain. When I glanced back at him, he was giving me a serious hard stare, which I was all too happy to return. I prepped for the worst as he approached. To my surprise, though, he merely sighed and gave me a pat on the back. "Fool! You really put others before yourself." He gave a resigned roll of his eyes before shoving the back of my head to get me galloping. "2 laps around the city, 1 for burning the halls and 1 for failing to catch Lucky." I blinked in shock, pausing to look at him for a moment. I cannot stress to you how much of a slap on the wrist that was. I simply gawked at him for several seconds, not believing my ears. "Get moving before I double it." Winter Sky's shouts are made of nail baits and gunmetal. As in, they frighten you. Had no problem taking off after that. "You're really pulling punches today, aren't you?" I called back at him as I ran off, smiling brightly. Now, don't go thinking that he gave me a wimpy slap on the wrist. He didn't. I mean, comparatively, yeah, it was pretty lightweight, but the capital was still effing huge. It was a good 14-mile gallop, and while galloping was a hell of a lot easier than running, 14 miles is still 14 miles. Twice. Needless to say, I was kinda beat. It wasn't nearly as rough on me as it used to be, though, which was probably the end he was working towards. After my nigh 30-mile jog, I figured I would go wash up and catch up with Luna. I took my time in the shower using my showering cool-down technique. It involves starting the water as hot as you can take it. Note, if you're fireproof, just go as hot as it can go, derp. And over the next 40 minutes, slowly cooling the water until it's actually cold. This relaxing technique has been passed down the Armstrong generation for No, really. My dad taught me that trick, and he claims his father was taught by his father. Couldn't have handed down a fortune. No, it had to be a showering trick. Lamer than a 3-legged hairless rat trying to climb up a wall, if you ask me. Anyway, I'm rambling. After chilling off, I decided to find the nearest Sky Archon, Silverheart, glomp her, then interrogate her to Luna's whereabouts. After receiving a beating for my affectionate impunity, she pointed me to the library. Portraying my thanks through the subtle art of more tackle-hugging, I quickly left before retaliation was brought to bear upon my flank. The library had to be quite possibly the biggest room in the castle. I don't know how they keep track of all those books. Seriously, ponies don't use the Dewey Decimal System or anything. They keep it all straight in their heads. Librarians have to be bloody geniuses, and I'm not making that up. There's a reason Twilight runs the library in Ponyville. Anyway, the reason this is relevant is because Luna was pulling a Twilight by having at least 30 books yanked out and stacked about a large table. Her nose was buried in a rather old black tome with taffed yellow pages. She was utterly silent, save for the soft ringing of magic her horn was emanating as it flicked about the pages, and as well as a long feather quill taking notes to her left. This was my chance to counter her abuse from earlier this morning. I slowly and quietly snuck up behind her, careful not to alert her to my presence. I didn't scare her. No, scaring people is quite cheap and can lead to bad accidents, such as spilling ink or inducing choking. Instead, I did something much worse. I broke out into song. Oh, I wish I was a Oscar Mayer wiener. Her quill snapped in half with instant irritation. I picked a good one. The fact that she was staying up late to study probably didn't help either. I was happily singing and bouncing around the library, just like Pinkie Pie. This may come as a shock, but a single gait bouncing is murder on the pony knees and hooves, or used to be anyway. Nowadays, after a few weeks with Winter Sky's sadistic exercises, this was the kind of stuff I did to get the stiffness out of my knees. As much as I hated to admit it, Sky was definitely getting the job done. I mean, 1 mile used to kill me, yet there I was, bouncing around like I had not just galloped a marathon. Luna didn't even look up from her book. "You are." "That is what I'd truly like to be." She angrily waved a hoof at me before tossing a spare book in my direction. "Hey, shut up, I'm trying to focus here." I caught the book before continuing my happy song. Hey, she started it. "For if I was a Oscar May wiener, every pony'd be in love with me." "If I say you are already loved by every pony, would you shut up?" Luna hollered, finally tearing her eyes away from the book. "Okay," I replied with a sigh, deflating a tad. "But I'm just so full of happy." "That's great, hot stuff." She gave me an exasperated smile before resorting to perturbed threats soaked in saccharine. "But I'm going to have to violently mute you if you don't hush and let me read in peace." "Aww." I cantered over to her, nuzzling at her neck. I was bored and Luna was making herself an open target. Even still, I was pulling punches for her sake. I could have easily have been doing much, much worse. She tried to be stoic about it, but eventually cracked with a snicker. "Go away," she laughed as she pushed at me with a hoof, but I wasn't going anywhere, continuing my merciless affection. "I know you're probably not interested in all this mushy stuff, but these are fond memories of mine. You don't have to read them if you don't want to, ass." "Uh-huh," I protested, still nuzzling away before she finally broke down and gave me a kiss. I wasn't aiming to get one, but I was practically pony cat purring when I did. "There, you got what you came for," she declared before pushing me off with her smile. "Now shoo!" I was greedy and came back for more, but she blocked me with a bit of magic force. I fruitlessly strained against it as I whined. "But I'm needy." "It shows." She winked at me before going back to her book. I finally let my curiosity get the best of me and tilted my head before asking, "What are you reading up on that's so important anyway? Is it a spell to get me out of your hair?" "No, though that wouldn't be a waste of time now that you mention it." She smirked, her eyes still gliding over the manuscript before her. "However, if you must know, I'm working on a spell to break the packed ponies. Contract without hurting them. Disrupting the spell is easy enough, but not if you want to preserve those bound by it." "Whoa!" I galloped over to the book after she let the field of force fade away, suddenly very interested. Don't know why I bothered, though. It was written in those stupid wingdings. Figures. Where's your See Jack Pony run? I need to learn how to read your silly little pictogram language. I wanna help. "Firewall, we don't stock those in the Royal Library," she said, without ever tearing her eyes off the book. "They're not exactly literally elite material." "Derp." "Oh, right," I replied as my ears fell flat against my head due to embarrassment. "Makes sense. Where would I find one?" "If I have to tell you, then I don't think you have what it takes to be a proper researcher," she remarked with a chuckle, finally glancing up at me. "Use common sense." I snarled a tad, irritated by her dismissal, but not in a bad way. Simply miffed and nothing more. Still, being miffed was enough to encourage me to one-up her. "Well, see, I had this awesome phone with the magic of Google, but this one trampy princess burnt it for her own selfish purposes," I reminded her with an exaggerated groan, hugging her neck to keep her from getting a clear shot at me. I knew it was coming in 3, 2, 1. Nothing? Yeah, she actually said and did nothing. At first I thought she was ignoring me, but the silence continued to fuel the anxiety of the moment. Finally she broke the suspense with a regretful apology. "I'm sorry." Not that I was expecting that at all. She sounded sincere, as though it had been keeping her up at night. Well, okay, I was totally expecting a right hook or something, but that's works too. I backed up a bit to look at her, arching an eyebrow. Her answer involved a half-heartedly laugh with an ashamed blush, which further caught me off guard. I let go of her and gave her a slightly confused smile as I realized I was pushing a guilty button of hers. At first I considered cranking up the heat and making a big deal out of it, but thought better of it when she lowered her head a tad. She was being totally serious, when I told myself guilty buttons suck anyway. With that in mind, I gave her a smile along with a more face nuzzle. "Truth be told, though," I mentioned nonchalantly, keeping that encouraging grin on my face, "I kinda like the trade-off I got in return, way more than I ever liked the phone." Luna blinked before looking back up at me with an expression that told me she was both shocked and touched. If I had to judge by her reaction of slightly tearing up and embracing me, I'd say this had definitely been on her mind for quite some time. A box of mysteries she was, silly and chilly one moment, emotionally sporadic the next. Women, huh? Yeah, they're that awesome. "Hey, it's cool," I chuckled a bit as I hugged her back, not expecting such a definite show of emotion. "Wow, was it really on your mind or something?" "Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I did it too, but that doesn't mean I didn't steal something that belonged to you. Thank you." Let that sink in a little. This was really off the wall for Luna, if you asked me. Then again, most people don't know I'm a complex person deep down either. If you cut right to the heart of the matter, my deep dark secrets, I like turtles, can really blow you away. "Well, we joked about it a lot, right? It's no big deal," I said comfortingly, putting my nonsense on hold. "Hey, don't be afraid to talk to me about stuff that is on your mind. Now you've got me all worried about what else is eating ya. Just don't keep it all bottled up in there, all right?" I know, I'm a hypocrite." She gave me a nod, tightening her hug as I wondered why she hadn't come out with it before. Maybe I had just missed the signs, but I was just glad that it came out like this rather than in some huge fight later on or something. Finally completing the transition from affection mode, so maybe it took a while, I gave her a more fervent embrace with a sympathetic laugh gently making its way out of me. "Firewall, you don't have to say anything, but—" she muttered softly, turning her head and pressing her face into my mane before continuing to speak. Naturally, when you bury your mouth into a wall of mane, it comes out all muffled and unintelligible. Luna is no exception to that rule, which is why I didn't catch a damn bird of that. "Luna, I didn't catch a damn bird of that," I informed her with a laugh. She pulled her face out of my mane and murmured softly, "I said I love you." Yeah, no kidding. Think less of me if you will, but the L word is a dangerous weapon that has led to a lot of pain and suffering in my past. I use it sparingly, to say the least. I mean, I know us bronies are all about love and tolerance, but there's accepting friendly love, and then there's romantic love. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm a scared bunny when it comes to commitment, not because I'm afraid to tying myself down, but because I don't trust myself. I'm not very in touch with my inner feelings, so I don't always know if I truly feel a certain way, or if I feel that special way because I want to, which doesn't work forever. You should have realized this by now, but I'm also that proficient in expressing my deepest emotions. Sometimes they bubble over, but most of the time I am content to hide them under all the silly. I realize humans generally have a lot of problems taking that step." She broke the embrace and stepped back, staring intently at the floor whilst she pawed at it. "So you don't have to say it back. I won't blame you for it. It's not even been a couple of months, and it's not out of place for a human to wait over a year. But when you're as old as I am, new things and new feelings mean a lot more. I won't be disappointed if you're not ready to say it yet, and I'm not dumb enough to doubt that you care. Just don't get weird and stupid just because I took that step, okay?" Digesting all that took a surprisingly short amount of time. Hypnosis was achievement unlocked, unconditional love. Get a girlfriend, pony friend, girlfriend to say that she loves you without requiring you to say it back, nor holding a deep emotional grudge against you if you don't. Oh yeah, I was definitely in a fantasy world and lucky as hell. Me? Be stupid? When have I ever? I broke the bit of the tension with some humor, which made her snicker a bit before lifting her head to smile back up at me. But yeah, let me cover in fear of a harmless world for a while longer, okay? Only if I get to point and laugh, she chuckled softly. And, by the way, you can see the Jack Pony run at the elementary school. Derp. Silverheart entered the library and tapped her hoof a few times to announce her presence. Firewall, Princess? Princess Celestia has sent me to fetch the two of you, pending your willingness and availability. Huh. She called you Princess. I sneered over at Luna, who rolled her eyes before looking to Silverheart. Tell her we'll be there shortly, Lieutenant, and don't call me Princess. Luna gave a polite smile as she swatted at me with a wing, which I dodged easily. Of course, Princess. Silverheart stated belligerently before turning around and leaving without another word. That pony was so stubborn. Storm mentioned more than once that she was his youngest officer because of her dedication, and I couldn't argue with his assessment. Luna face-huffed before looking back at me with a weary smirk. "Y'all ready for this?" I pantomimed the Space Jam theme for a few seconds before nodding happily and bouncing towards the door. I didn't get very far, though, as she caught me mid-air and informed me that if I continued with that silliness, there would be consequences. Party pooper. I got the hint, though. This was likely going to be a serious matter, and I needed to treat it as such. As we entered the throne room/royal court, we were informed that we were to actually head towards Celestia's personal quarters to speak to her. Luna reasoned that she likely didn't want to have this conversation within the presence of the others who weren't concerned. It seemed reasonable enough. We left without ever really stopping and trotted our happy flanks right up to Celestia's pad. Stopping just outside the door, Luna gave me a glance. "Behave," she ordered. I chuckled before rolling my eyes. I wasn't the volatile one. I was going to tell you the same thing. The door swung open immediately. "Bickering is unbecoming for you both." Celestia's soft voice rang out from inside. "Now stop loitering at my door, if you would, please. Thank you." We blinked before looking at one another and letting out a soft bout of laughter as we entered. Not bickering? Yeah, Celestia did not know us very well, obviously. She was actually busy reading over a note that I surmised had come from Twilight. The really cool thing was that she was wearing a pair of rimless rectangular glasses. Epic, okay? Celestia in bifocals totally pulled off the mom attitude that she was no doubt preparing to drop on us. "Firewall, I'll need you to go to Ponyville after we've had our discussion." Her eyes briefly darted towards us, and she spoke those last few words. "Twilight needs to run some tests on you, it seems. Be sure to tell Stormwing to come home long enough to get his ceremony over with when you do." A little more catch-up. Twilight had been studying the shadow magic that had been used by the Nightmare to see if efficient countermeasures could be taken against it in the future. Stormwing had been practically living in Ponyville. Why? He refused to say. My guess all the time was that he was afraid of being a prince, which is actually kinda silly because the last I checked, Stormwing doesn't afraid of anything. I give a nod. Can do. Celestia continued to read over the scroll silently for a few moments longer. Luna's impatience got the better of her. Tia, I know you're busy, but you called us here, she pointed out with an raised eyebrow. Celestia remained quiet for another few seconds before rolling the scroll back up with a cough to clear her throat. She stared at nothing for a while as she considered her next words, which really helped to build the tension and general unease. Eventually she finally sighed and turned towards us. I don't want you to think I am trying to be nosy or controlling, she stated whilst chewing on her lip. However, while it is not my business, in all fairness, I want you to know that my curiosity comes from concern for both of you. I fidgeted. It's what I do when I'm not allowed to be, well, me really. Luna, on the other hand, was a bit more direct with her reaction. Translation: I'm sorry for butting in, but I'm totally butting in? Yes. Celestia was not perturbed by Luna's blunt nature. She's been around it for several millennia, so this was likely nothing new. So why don't we get explanations out of the way? How did you two come to pass? That was actually a damn good question, we had just realized. We looked at each other, not entirely sure where it stopped being friends and started being something more. After a moment of staring, I smiled and took the initiative. Well, it became official when she turned my hair pink and I ran her down to tape a troll face over her cutie mark. I mused, tapping my chin as I stared pensively at the ceiling. But it sort of was subtle moving that was way ever since. Ever since you got captured, Tia. Luna finished with a reminiscent nod. He was blaming himself for your capture and ended up, well, having a breakdown right on me. I mean, it was kinda shocking. He had been nothing but laughs and jokes, but all of a sudden I've got a crying human on my hooves. I was completely taken by surprise, but still it was very sweet. I could feel the heat rushing to my cheeks, nose and ears. I fidgeted a bit more as Celestia gave me a contemplative glance. Breakdown? Celestia seemed a tad apprehensive. So he cried on you? You know, I didn't figure you have a thing for the sensitive type, Blue, given that you're so abrasive. I'm still here, you know, I murmured, my blush intensifying. He can totally handle my brand of pain, she countered without hesitation. And he's pretty good at serving it right back, too. Celestia shook her head as her eyes rotated sardonically. The concept of two insufferably snarky ponies frequenting my presence does not tickle my fancy, dear sister. Besides, it likely comes from his innate sense of defiance, you know. I'm totally right here. I held a hoof, suddenly feeling very left out of this conversation. Luna trotted over to Celestia's bed, hopping up onto it and quickly making herself comfortable before offering her rebuttal. Well, it's my opinion that he enjoys it as much as I do, and that while we harass each other relentlessly, we also spend just as much time being affectionate. It was true. There was the occasional day where we weren't in the mood for verbal sparring, and we could instead spend it taking long walks at the beach and getting caught in the rain. Also, those last two things may have actually never happened. You know why? Because I hate the beach and the weather is kinda on a set schedule here. Still, what mattered at this particular moment was that both my significant other and the royal sister were ignoring the hell out of me. Fair enough. I'll not speculate on personality compatibility then. You obviously know yourself better than I do. Celestia held up a disarming hoof before looking back at her sister and floating her glasses off her eyes. And now for the elephant in the room. He is a human. You are a pony. Just some FYI, the human in question feels ignored. I sighed before cantering over to one of Celestia's cushy benches and flopping down onto it. I'll get to you in a moment, Firewall. Be patient. Celestia called back to me before turning her attention back to her sister. Tia, we know. We really do. I mean, what can I say? Luna shrugged her wings helplessly, sighing somewhat. Celestia shut her eyes. And what happens when Firewall gets homesick and wants to go home? Or if he doesn't stay a unicorn forever? Are you willing to take the heartbreak? It was rather haunting, hearing Celestia's voice, the fears that both my inner halves had been throwing at me this whole time. When Luna didn't immediately respond, Celestia turned back towards me. And what about you, Firewall? Aren't you worried that a very little likely obstacle might arise? Well, I started to reply with a one-hoofed shrug. Part of me wants to remind you that any relationship comes with obstacles, and it's kinda bland without them. I mean, sure, this is going to get funky, and a large part of me is seriously scared. How scared? Her response was immediate and quite serious. He can't even say love, Luna pointed out. And judging from your tone, you not only can, but have. Celestia took a moment to shut her eyes once more before turning around to face Luna, who had the biggest, most arrogant grin I'd ever seen her muster. That's saying a lot, by the way, so just so you know. I held a hoof to get attention. She's pretty gutsy. When big muscle-bound ponies walk into the room, I have to hold her back before she starts a fight. Listen up, both of you. I'm not trying to say that you're making a big mistake and that you need to stop, but I'm trying to say you both need to tread lightly and don't get stupid. Also, do not entertain any ideas of taking things to the next step. That glare. No, really, there was no way it could have been more serious. You haven't already, have you? Luna decided more conflict was in order. And what if we have? We hadn't, before you ask. It had not even entered my brain cells as a considerable thought. In fact, just don't bother asking, okay? No, this is not up for discussion. Depends. Celestia did not take the bait, remaining calm and recollected. Are you with Foal yet? Mother of God, I am so uncomfortable with this kind of talk. I cried out, as a blush on my face threatening to catch fire at any given moment. Yes, actually, twins. Luna was so full of shit. This is where my mind was all, oh, that's how much you like ponies. I think that was laughter, actually. Then that ever-curious bastard stoic began to wonder how the mechanics works. I promptly put a pillow over their metaphorical faces and smothered those sick sons of bitches. Celestia wasn't buying it. The way she rolled her eyes told me she was fighting between disgust and irritation. Then in that case, they'll become orphans in record time after I'm done strangling you both. You have to be serious, Luna, for once in your life. Sorry, I spent all my seriousness at the Battle of Shadows. Luna tittered with a half-hearted wing shrug. But I'll try, and no, we've kept it fair enough for fillies. Besides, Firewall might have a meltdown if I tried anything like that just yet. Yet. She said yet. Sweet pony Jesus, where did I go wrong? Celestia did breathe out a sigh, so heavy with relief it was almost tangible. Good. Don't cross that line, please, at least for now. We don't know what could happen between two species. I instantly began beating my face into the bench in an attempt to violently destroy those surfacing images. Why did I let this happen? What was I thinking? Why didn't I just listen to laughter and stoic? I don't want to cross that line, I kept myself. Laughter decided to torment me by reminding me that Luna would probably get what she wants. Stoic concurred, which meant it was crazy and laughable, yet sensible and probable. Look at him, he's so ashamed. I don't even have to tell you which one said that. Celestia actually laughed a bit before slowing my motions down a bit with her magic. I was whimpering, I won't lie. It just felt so wrong, the concept of and ponies and rainbows. My dream Equestria was threatening to become a dirty nightmare. It doesn't bother you at all that he's obviously intimidated by the idea? I heard Celestia say as I pitifully stared at the cushion beneath me. It was red, like my face, and not only as much. Luna began laughing as she tried to answer, only to laugh more at the situation. At least I was hoping it was the situation and not actually me. Eventually she decided to ignore her sister and torment me further. "Hey, Firewall!" she called out to me, to which I foolishly responded by looking up, wondering if I was just dreaming this insanity all up. "Nay!" She groaned in the most suggestive fashion ever, rolling her head from side to side. Celestia unwillingly coughed out a laugh, and even I had to sputter mirthfully at how ridiculous this whole subject was. Pretty soon we were all laughing uncontrollably, and for a good minute or so, no less. "You're going to hell, Luna," I face-soothed, still chuckling despite myself. She was too busy holding her ribs as she laughed herself hoarse. It took her a while longer to wind down before Celestia finally glanced my way, wiping at her tears. "Oh, Luna, your sadism should not be this entertaining." She flexed her jaw, working all that strain one gets from laughing too much in one setting. "But Firewall, you need not to worry. Luna's thousands of years old, and though your fears are quite obvious, she's not stupid enough to try anything before you're ready." I held my hoof over my face. What would my mother think? "Hi, Mom, this is the mother of your grandfillies." "Son, that's a pony with wings and a horn." "Oh, damn, we were hoping you wouldn't notice. Just wait until you see the kids." "If it's even possible to intermingle," Celestia mentioned offhand. Celestia began cackling again, and only barely managed to get the next sentence out. Well, we'll find out." That was it. My mind had taken enough. I stuffed my face into that bench cushion and attempted to suffocate myself. This must not come to pass, I told myself. "I need an adult," I cried out, muffled by the pillow-like cushion. She had the response prepped and uttered it by the most seedy, gravely voice she could manage. "I'm an adult." "This is getting out of hand. Luna, stop harassing him." I could hear Celestia trying to save me. Bless her, she was trying. "Are you not comfortable being hoofed there, Firewall?" Oh yeah, she was still bitter about that. Granted, I may have rubbed it in her face, but she was still the one holding the grudge. I whined like a beaten dog. "I'm uncomfortable with everything being hoofed out here. No more, Uncle, okay?" "Oh, fine." She crossed her hooves and giggled a bit more before scooting to the edge of the bed and hanging one of her hooves off the side. It was very suspicious, really, the intentionality of the action. Still, I was just happy that it was all over. Or so I thought. "Luna, what are you—" Celestia began to ask before Luna interrupted her by tapping her hoof upon the marble floor. Then doing so again, and again, and again, each time quickening her pace. The horror quickly set in. "Straight to hell, Luna! I regret everything!" I cried, jumping up and dashing for the door with an harrowing echo of clubs chasing me the entire way. I ran down the stairs as fast as I could, utterly mortified. Ponies plus caramel relations? Bad. I'm not a pony after dark sort of guy, and this was getting a little too real for my taste. The really bad part was that I couldn't actually escape the sound, since my own hooves were making the exact same noises as I ran screaming. Quick thinking took me to the soft, non-clopping grass of the garden. I toasted down 3 cigarettes back to back as fast as I could in an attempt to burn away the horrors I could very well be facing in the eventual future. It wasn't working, but that didn't keep me from trying. As I went for a fourth, a soft cuff from a certain red stallion brought me out of my frightened daze. I swung my head back to see Hotshot, which only served to further dampen my day. "Oh, hey, what's up?" I turned, asking, to face him more naturally as he approached. Hotshot sorta didn't like me anymore, or maybe just ever. I think he blamed me for what happened to Starlight. I mean, true, it wasn't my fault that the love of his life had traded her freedom for his, but I don't begrudge him for him. Losing someone so close to you cut you a lot of slack in my book. If it somehow helped him feel better to take it out on me in some subtle way, I'm tough enough to take it. I don't think it had, seeing as how Winter Sky had made mention it in the past, that he was considering removing Hotshot from the Archons for emotional instability. He wasn't in his armor for once, which made me wonder if that hadn't already taken place. Both his voice and expressions were about as stone-cold as the tip of an iceberg. "Princess Celestia sent me to you that I would escort you to Ponyville. Silverheart is bringing the sky carriage." "Awesome sky carriage," I interrupted him. "What?" He blinked, not understanding. I smiled hopefully. "Awesome sky carriage of awesomeness. Trademark." "Right." My hopes were dashed, as it was apparent that he was not amused. In fact, he seemed more irritated than anything. "And I'm to escort you." "Oh, great, cool, that's a bitchin'." I went ahead with lighting my cigarette before sighing and looking down. You all right? You seem a little tense." "I'm fine." He set his jaw a bit, involuntarily sign of aggression. Yes, this was going to be fun. Decided to try and disarm the hostilities one more time. "Well, I'm not." I took a drag of my cigarette. "I just had to run away from Celestia talking about, holding off intimate moments with Luna." Even he was caught unaware despite his rough attitude. That was a nibble. "I'm sure there's a good reason for it," he replied, still a tad unsettled. "There is," I groaned in exasperation. "But talking about that kind of stuff involving Luna really bothers me, you know." He was pretty blunt about his return question. "There's something wrong with Princess Luna?" "Not at all." I laughed, a little too quick with my answer. "No, Luna's fine. It's just, well, see, ponies exist where I come from, but not like you guys. They're kinda... I mean, you know how cats and dogs are just animals? Not really intelligent the way you and I are?" "I guess so." His raised eyebrow told me a lot of nothing, other than the conversation wasn't boring him. "Well, where I come from, ponies are like that. So while ponies here are obviously nothing like that, it's still provoking that tiny voice in the back of my head to scream at how wrong it is. Or two voices, rather." I took a long drag of the cigarette, hesitantly laughing as I mentally braced the door for common sense to keep it from getting out. After staring at me for several seconds, he finally shrugged his wings. "Damn him!" "That sounds like quite a problem to have." His voice was deadpan and entirely void of sympathy. Left me hanging, he did. I sighed and had a short mental foray on whether or not I should do what I was about to do. More or less, I equated to Firewall can't keep his mouth shut, and thus I dug up the beef. I inhaled off the cigarette before glancing at him and sighing yet a second time. "Hey, are you seriously all right?" "I'm fine." You notice how nobody says fine when they really are? They say something like good or okay, but never fine. "You sure?" I pried. The intentional, unblinking stare he gave me told me more than his words. "Yes, I'm sure." "Right," I replied, chewing on my lip before getting a little more direct. "Listen, Hotshot, I'm sorry about Starlight." "Don't." His visage immediately hardened even more so. I shook my head, staring back at the ground. "I really think I should." "No, you shouldn't." He really did not want to have this conversation. I looked back up at him, frowning as I spoke. "Look, I'm not one to leave words left unsaid. Sometimes curbing your tongue is for the best." His voice had become threatening, and his mane was slowly beginning to stand up. "If you know what's good for you, that is." Before I could decide whether I wanted to take him up on that offer or try to chill him out, Silverheart landed right between us with the ASCA. The arrival had been rather abrupt and could have almost been considered a crash. "I wouldn't take that chance if I were you, Hotshot." Silverheart coming to my defense was touching and all, but I kinda wanted to tell her that I didn't need protecting. Until I heard her next words, that is. "It wasn't that long ago that he served you your flank on a slightly charred silver platter, in case you've forgotten." Hotshot's eyes narrowed as he glanced back at me before glaring back at Silverheart. "That wasn't me." "Hotshot, I know you're mad about what happened, but that's not something Firewall did or can do anything about." Silverheart snapped immediately. "I'm not sure why you're unable to make that connection on your own, but if that's not enough encouragement, then maybe this is. He saved my life, Hotshot, so if things get heated, don't be surprised when I step in. And I'm not the only one. There'll be a long line of ponies ready to send you to nurse tender care without a second thought." "Silver, stop. Antagonizing him, he's gotta escort me. I don't want him to throw me off the carriage, you know." I chuckled nervously, not at all liking where this was going. "He's entitled to his opinion. Just let it go." A little bit of insight here. Silverheart is the youngest Sky Archon, yet one of the highest-ranking ones. Why? "Perhaps it's best if I don't escort you, Firewall," Hotshot uttered, his voice seething with contempt. Before I could respond to say that was fine with me, Silverheart was all over it. "You'll do as you're ordered, Hotshot, and you'll do it to the best of your ability, just as is demanded of all Sky Archons. If you can't do your duties, then perhaps you need to tell Captain Winter Sky that you're unable to perform and step down with some dignity." That's why. She doesn't mince words, she doesn't pull punches or bugs, and she certainly had no problem doing her duty, even if it involves putting other Sky Archons in their place. She's also the only other Archon that can withstand a flying tackle hug from me without so much as a budge. That may sound silly, but when you compare my size to most of the small zippy Archons, it takes on a greater significance. "Is it going to come to that?" she hissed between her teeth. After a moment of silence, Hotshot finally lowered his gaze and replied, "No, Lieutenant Silverheart." "Glad to hear it," she snapped at him, his submission failing to take the edge off her mood. With that, she hopped off the carriage and swung her pierced gaze over to me. I had to force myself not to cower. Silverheart's frightening, okay? Hell, every pony is frightening, it seems. "Hi there." I waved a hoof at her, somehow forcing myself not to sweat. "Get on," she demanded. "You too, Hotshot." Without any protesting or complaining whatsoever, we boarded the ASCA as quickly as we could. I finished my cigarette, flicking it with a nervous glance towards my escort. He looked almost like he had the wind sucked out of his sails. Didn't blame him. "Now you both have a safe trip, and if I hear about any fighting, I swear on Luna's moon and Celestia's sun I will have you both limping in pain for the next 2 seasons. Is that clear?" Her voice was like my father's when I cracked his computer processors from excessive overclocking. Only worse. "Invisibly clear," I resorted with a nervous smile. "Yes, Lieutenant Silverheart," Hotshot replied before taking control of the ASCA and zipping us away. We flew in complete silence. It was probably the longest 30-40-minute trip to Ponyville ever. I guess no news was good news, but I hated being disliked by good peeps. It was always felt like a shortcoming on my part, being unable to mend broken ties. My buddies back at home always called me a peacemaker, which was kind of flattering, but even I wasn't able to make it work 100% of the time. Sad face. We got there somewhere around lunchtime. When we landed just outside Ponyville, we couldn't find a parking space anywhere in town. I lit a smoke and hopped off the ASCA, only to be silently followed by my escort. When I glanced back at him, he immediately looked away, letting me know that interaction would be kept at a minimum if he had this way. I face-huffed immediately, before looking back at him. "Look, Hotshot, I'm sorry I got you in trouble with Lieutenant Silverheart, but one of 2 things have to change," I explained before turning to face him more directly. "Either you buck up and smile, or you go back to Canterlot. It was never said that you had to follow me all day, right? Just escort me to Ponyville. Well, here I am. So, which is it going to be?" Hotshot did not react well. He ground his teeth a tad as he pawed the dirt before shaking his head and becoming instantly serene. I remember having done the same thing during several family idiocy events. "Very well. You are here in Ponyville?" He was speaking more to himself, as if justifying his actions. "I should get back to Canterlot." "Right, awesome." I smiled at him, trying not to come off as a sex scene. "Good work, totally made it here. You make a fine escort." "Yes." Okay, so we both knew that wasn't what Princess Celestia wanted. However, neither of us wanted to be around the other, and we did obey the letter of the command, if not to the spirit. If he left and was caught without me, though, he would probably get his flank re-aimed for it. As unfriendly as he was being, I didn't want to see bad things happen to good ponies. "Perhaps I should stay here, near the carriage, in case you need an escort on your return." "Look, Hotshot, I don't want you to catch hell for this, so how about this? I'm going to call in a favor for you. At least, I hope it'll work. You need to relax, and I need to be able to exist without you breathing down my neck, so how about this?" I beckoned him along. "Ever been to a spa?" 10 minutes later. "Rarity, darling!" I hollered in the most annoyingly pretentious British accent I could manage as I threw open the door to the Carousel Boutique. "Simply marvelous to see you again, my dear. How have you been?" You want to know sad? When you spontaneously is so commonplace that it derives little to no reaction. All I got from Rarity, who was currently sketching out a connectual design, was a smile. She didn't even look at me. Still, the smile meant that I was brightening a very boring day. "Splendid, simply splendid. Yourself?" She replied as we entered. There were no customers, which was usual for Rarity. She dealt in quality, not quantity. Most ponies could not afford her expertise, and the few that could, well, let's just say that Rarity wasn't in danger of starving. However, Ponyville might be in danger of economic takeover should she get a wild hair up her plot some day. I'm utterly divine, my good mare. I made a show of bowing before trotting over to her. I always stopped in to bug Rarity when I was in Ponyville, thus it was no big surprise when she stopped drawing long enough to receive the mandatory hug I threw around her neck. "What you working on?" "Actually, it's something for Princess Luna. She asked me to make this, though she didn't say why. I don't think it's for her, though." She supplied before glancing at Hotshot over my shoulder. "Oh, why, hello. Who's your handsome friend?" Hotshot blushed as he looked down. He wasn't in a social mood, as one might guess. I would have answered her question, but my eyes caught on the picture she was sketching out. It was a hoodie. Not just any hoodie either. It was my favorite one. See, I have this tannish grey hoodie designed to look worn out, with faded black lettering on the front and back. I kinda got all fluttery in the heart from A, having realized that I had acquired troll potential to throw at Luna for discovering a surprise meant for me, and B, being overwhelmed in happiness. "Firewall?" Rarity let a gentle hoof on my shoulder to attract my attention, to which I visibly jumped in response before answering her question. "Oh, right," I blinked, looking back at Hotshot. "This is Hotshot of the Sky Archons. He's actually why I'm here. I kinda wanted to borrow a favor from you." "Borrow a favor?" She smiled at the terminology. "Do you plan to give it back, darling?" "Totally, though it might be slightly used and need a wash afterwards." I countered with a wink. "Do you think you could treat my friend here to a day at the spa? Well, let's just say he could use it." "I don't need your pity, Firewall." His tone was as flat as a lever. Rarity gave a slight wince before leaning over and whispering to me. "I see what you mean." I nodded before giving her a souped-up pout face. It worked like a charm. "Oh, stop that!" She rolled her eyes before pushing my face away with a hoof. "Very well, then, I could use a break myself. And where will you be in the meantime?" "Depends," I shrugged. "Have you seen Captain Jack Pony today?" Prince Stormwing." The glare she cut me told me that she wasn't impressed by my colorful wording. "Yes, I mean, oh dear." "Oh dear?" I blinked, looking back at Hotshot, who crooked an eyebrow in confusion. I turned and gave Rarity my best pinky soul gaze, failed miserably, before prying. "Little Miss Rarity, are you hiding Stormwing's whereabouts from me?" Rarity sighed somewhat, before pushing my face back yet a second time. She learned this trick from Twilight and Luna. "Truly, Firewall, you must learn to respect a lady's personal space. And the answer is no, I'm not hiding his whereabouts, my good sir. You will likely find him at Fluttershy's animal shelter. Be a dear and ask Fluttershy to meet me at the spa when you got to go to fetch him. In the meantime, I'll be closing up shop for the day. Sir Hotshot, would you mind being a dear? Grab that sign and set it just outside the door, please." Hotshot either liked being a gentle colt, knew how to separate his feelings on a pony-by-pony basis, or was simply trying to be immaculate despite his mood. Whatever the case, he did as he was told, grabbing the closed sign and heading for the door, dragging it along with him in his mouth. I wonder what happens if an Earth pony has to do dirty laundry. I wouldn't put my dirty underwear in my mouth if you paid me. Okay, so prices may be negotiable. I looked back at Rarity as he slipped out of easy earshot. Don't let those floozies at the spa flirt with him. Him and Commander Starlight are an item, and he will likely have a bad reaction. So tell them to keep it fair enough for fillies, and we won't have another incident like last time. I went to that spa once. It was not at all relaxing. Not because they can't do their job. No, far from it. Those ponies go the extra mile to make you relaxed. However, sometimes that extra mile isn't what you asked for. I mean, nothing bad happened, and it may have been a gross misinterpretation, but let's just say, Luna forbids me from going anywhere Lotus and Aloe. Their real names come from the Eastern European words, but I don't know how to pronounce or spell them without butchering the language. Let's also just say that if there is such a thing as an equestrian spa with a happy ending, it's likely that one. I know, it hurts my brain too. Floozies? Really, Firewall, I thought you were opposed to speaking ill of other ponies behind their backs. Rarity curly snipped at me, though the smile creeping on her face was only slightly mischievous. And I still say you were overreacting. What? She was breathing into my... You know what? No, we are not going to have this conversation. I smiled sweetly at her. Thanks again, Rarity. You're a doll. Oh, stop it, I'll blush. Rarity did the whole wrist hoof flick and everything. With that, we all exited, said our farewells, and parted ways. Them to their spar, me to my abode Del Fluttershy. Celestia's beautiful shining sun cut the edge of the cooler wind that was foretelling the inevitable arrival of winter. I was excited for it personally. I might even get to participate in the winter wrap-up song. I gushed to no pony but myself. I skipped as I avoided the shadows cast by trees and buildings to allow my dark coat to soak in the warm sunlight. It really didn't take that long for me to make my way to Fluttershy's hobbit hole. Dude, straight out of Hobbington, okay? I'm not lying here, I've been inside. Her designer is Bilbo Baggins. I went to tap on the door, only to stop as I heard a laugh from the other side of the house hill thing that Fluttershy lived in. I slipped around to where she had a small plantation full of critters. Just as I did, a flying squirrel landed on my head and startled me for a second. At first he was cute until he crossed the line and began furiously gnawing on my horn. I shrieked in horror and began flailing like an idiot to get him off, but he was persistent. I don't know, maybe I had left a marshmallow up there and forgot about it. Whatever the case, the squirrel would not let go. "Get it off!" I cried, running around as I swung my head back and forth, eventually flipping the sorry bastard off as he became too motion-sick to stay attached. I was going to go trample the sorry sucker for his unwarranted attack, but Fluttershy caught it mid-flight and whipped out the stare. The first time it's ever been used on me. Okay, let's set that scene for you. I'm in Fluttershy's backyard. Fluttershy is staring me down with a flying rodent in her grasp. Stormwing is there, sitting on a picnic cloth that happened to be decorated with loads of finger foods, hoof foods, and fruits, along with a bottle of grape juice stewing in a bucket of ice cubes. There were 2 wine glasses that had gold trim at the base and rim full of the juice. Both had been sipped from already. Stormwing's crown was on Fluttershy's head, and Stormwing's hair had been pulled out of his braid. They were having a date. An honest to Celestia date. No wonder Rarity didn't want to tell me anything. Now back to the stare. You hear about the stare mentioned in hushed whispers? Why? Because Fluttershy has been known to kill a few ponies with it back in her day. Okay, maybe not that extreme, but seriously, it's an actual thing. You can't find it off any more than you can find off sneezing after getting a face full of pepper. It's horrific. Your eyes and body stop moving. Seriously, try staring at one of your eyes in the mirror. After about 30 seconds, it gets really hard to not move. Your heart rate accelerates to such speeds that you can hear it pounding in your ears. Your body temperature spikes, your mouth gets dry, and you know nothing but fear. I nearly blacked out, which is stupid because it's bucking Fluttershy for crying out loud. Eventually she let me go after I had calmed down by smiling softly and began petting the carnivorous beast in an effort to comfort it. Stormwing, on the other hand, he didn't look so happy. It was understandable. After all, I had just flung a flying squirrel at their date, while screaming. That sort of stuff has a tendency to shatter the mood. I stared back and forth between them as though they had grown third eyes. Wah, dude! Hello, Firewall. Fluttershy blushed, feeling a tad on the spot. She totally was, too. Stormwing narrowed his already glaring eyes, and for a second I was wondering if he could see me clearly. Then I face-huffed. Firewall, what are you doing here? He was being so direct. You and Fluttershy. I was gawking at an utter loss for what else to say. It's the opposing ends of a magnet. That's my mind. She's blown. Fluttershy blushed all the more and began petting the squirrel a little too hard at her as her anxiety began to set in. This turn caused it to leap away from her in protest, which annoyed Stormwing even further. We're totally still best buds, though, even if he does want to kick my flank. Firewall, I have a mind to... he began to say before pausing rather suddenly. At first I had no understanding of what caused him to halt his heartfelt threat, but then I noticed Fluttershy cringing and covering her ears as though some explosion were about to go off. Then it hit me like a bug to the face. Oh! I gasped, pointing at Fluttershy, then him, jaw dropped in awe. Look at you, reeling it in for the lady in your life. You smarmy dog, you. Fluttershy seemed to actually be cheered up by this somewhat, as though she was pleased to see that her mere presence were holding back violence and harsh words. Firewall, he muttered, his voice straining to not sound threatening or hostile. Try as he might, though, he hadn't quite mastered it just yet. What? You going to hit me? I pulled the ultimate sucker punch and ran behind Fluttershy, cringing with foxed terror as I pleaded my case before her. He's going to hit me. Fluttershy, save me! Oh dear, please don't fight. Fluttershy fell for it, turning to Stormwing and setting a hoof on his shoulder to try and calm him down. I stuck my tongue at him from behind her. This was quite possibly the most unfair and unsporting act I've ever committed. If nothing else, this will send me straight to hell. And I will totally have earned it too. God will say, sorry son, you pulled that nonsense with Fluttershy, and I will nod and reply, no, I completely deserve it. But seriously, Storm, don't worry, my lips are sealed. I won't tell anyone about this. I smiled brightly, stepping out from behind Fluttershy. I'm the last person you have to worry about spoiling a relationship and sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. In fact, the only reason I'm here is because Celestia sent me to play Stormwing fetch. Now I must pick you up with my mouth and scamper on back to her. If your mouse comes in contact with me, it better be because my hoof hit your face. Although I didn't say as much, I agreed wholeheartedly with him. I ain't no cold cuddler. Not that there's anything wrong with them, just ain't one myself. They just ain't pretty enough for me, except for Orlando Bloom. He's pretty enough for every pony. Oh, Aragon. Every pony is gay for Aragorn. Stormwing, you shouldn't say such mean things. Fluttershy continued to gently berate her beloved colt. About 16,000 different ideas kicked open the door to my brain. So much to say about that blush on Stormwing's face, and I couldn't figure out how to get a single word out. I'm being dead serious when I say it made me rather light-headed. I nearly passed out. Luckily I didn't, but I came close. It was awful. I might have missed something awesome. Still, I did double over somewhat and face-hoof as I laughed so hard that I was actually making almost no sound whatsoever. Oh, hell! I blurted out, covering somewhat. I think I'm going to vomit rainbows or something. I can't even muster the nerves to rub that in your face.
Firewall, are you going to be okay?
Fluttershy tilted her head, a visage compromised of worry and fear for my sake. When she held a hoof over her mouth, unsure of what to do, I quickly reined it in so as to keep her from panicking. Damn it, Fluttershy, you never gave me diabetes, but you came close many times.
He's stupid, Fluttershy.
Stormwing huffed, still quite irritated with me.
Stormwing, please.
Her voice and expression were telling me that she was becoming impatient with him.
Stop being so mean-spirited. What has Firewall done to you that you have to act this way?
It's cool, Fluttershy. I disarmed that bomb immediately. I did not want to be a catalyst for hurt feelings between one of my best friends and one of my favorite ponies. That would have been awful sauce. He's just really defensive about his emotions. Most every guy and even every girl I know has that problem. Don't sweat it, Storm. I mean, yeah, I poke at you a lot, but some things are sacred. You told Winter you could trust me, right?
Yes, I did.
His resigned sigh told me he was already starting to cool off. So you trust me, okay? I smiled and held my hoof out to him. Bro hoof?
Yeah, bro hoof.
He clopped the hoof and furrowed his brow before asking the question on his mind.
So, what was I called for?
Your official crowning, apparently, Prince Stormwing. I made a show of bowing because Fluttershy to titter. That's when the realization set in, and I suddenly was overcome with the urge to rub it in. Oh man, wait, that makes you related to Blueblood. How's that for a wake-up call, bucko? I think he nearly threw up, judging by the sickened expression on his face.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, come on, I argued, sticking my tongue out. He's done quite a bit of growing up.
Oh yes, I agree.
Fluttershy nodded with an excited smile. Other than Celestia, she was the happiest pony to have seen that jerk make a turnaround.
He's helped quite a bit with getting Appaloosa into good working order.
She was right, too. When we had all returned to Canterlot, Celestia made mention of how many tasks she would have to tackle, the worst of which would be the repair and reconstruct of Appaloosa. Most of the buildings had been sacked, and even more of them had been damaged beyond acceptable living conditions. Luna offered to take the job of helping in that regard, but Celestia in turn asked her to instead help Twilight study the magical forces of the enemy. When the matter came up again over dinner, Blueblood earnestly and stubbornly insisted that he help. Celestia was extremely hesitant, but when Luna, myself, and even Stormwing made mention that he had been making quite the change, she fearfully took him up on it. I'll say this, by the time he's done with it, he'll likely have it better than it was before the Battle of Shadows.
I still can't believe you managed to get away with kicking him in the face.
Stormwing made an obvious attempt at misdirection, which, sadly, worked perfectly.
You kicked Prince Blueblood in the face?
Fluttershy rounded on me, shocked and appalled with the news.
Firewall, how could you? You should be ashamed.
Screw Prince Stormwing. Well, I am now. Does that count? I resorted to defensive guilt-tripping out of pure reaction. Had I been thinking, I would never have done such a thing to Fluttershy. I'm such an ass. Geez, Fluttershy, way to sully a fond moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Though it made no sense whatsoever, Fluttershy made the connection that her actions directly resulted in bad feelings for me. She instantly hung her head, causing me to actually feel bad for my hairy trigger idiocy. I know me. I didn't mean it, Fluttershy, I pleaded with her, trying to get her to see reason. I'm sorry.
Yes, you certainly are.
Stormwing believed that to be an accurate assessment, and at that moment he was right.
Stormwing!
Fluttershy snapped, pursing her lips at him. "Firewall!" I cried, stomping angrily at me. Then, before any of us could say anything further, we all immediately came to the same conclusion. This situation was going to implode. We should totally go our separate ways before one of us has a panic attack. Storm, head back to the castle whenever you can. Also, Fluttershy, Rarity would like you to meet her at the spa, since she apparently can't seem to go by herself. And I still need to go see Twilight before I make my way back, but not before I go grab some elementary books. They gave me some odd looks, but didn't bother asking what that was all about. Storm took off soon after, but not before getting a nuzzle from his girl. We waved him goodbye as he left and began our walk back into town. We chatted about recent events and how awesome it was that the damage of yonder past days was fading quickly. Once I got her good and chatty, "You gotta go slow with Fluttershy, she doesn't just throw herself into a conversation," I brought up the rather nosy subject that you are no doubt wondering yourself. "So, you and Storm, huh?" I gave her a sly look. "You vicious seductress, taking advantage of the poor prince." It's taken a while for Fluttershy to get used to sarcasm, and she still had not quite the hang of it. Fortunately, her confusion was quickly replaced with a comprehensive giggle.
"Oh, yes, quite awful of me,"
she said in an extremely overdramatic tone, wagging her eyebrows like a boss. The eyebrow wag did it for me. I busted out laughing at just how ridiculous it was, which gave Fluttershy a much-needed confidence surge. After I paused to wipe my eyes, I lit up and cast a spell to get the wind blowing away from Fluttershy. I felt a twinge of dizziness that faded as quickly as it had arrived. Casting spells outside your field of expertise is like straining muscles that you never use to do things they are not designed for. That's really the best way to describe it. The breeze spell is about as tame as it comes, so even I don't have problems casting it. I accidentally burned Luna with free-flying ashes once, so I decided I would go out of my way to learn it. Anyway, any pony has a potential, if not the capacity, to cast any spell, but your affinity really does play into how much that spell affects you, or if you even have that set capacity. The more you know. "Wow, Fluttershy, that was awesome!" I congratulated her on her triumph over the subtle nuances of sarcasm. "So really, when did this happen? This is kinda sudden."
"Well, maybe it is for you,"
she countered with a wistful smile in the direction he had flown away.
"But the prince has been watching over me for some time now."
"Oh?" I narrowed my eyes a little confused. "Ever since that night at the campfire after the Battle of Shadows?"
"Oh no, before that even,"
she refuted, looking back at me curiously.
"You were there, don't you remember?"
"Not at all," I shook my head.
"You were, though, when I got scared at the bridge and he picked me up?"
She explained, her big turquoise eyes intently boring into my face. She almost seemed upset that she had to retell it, but then again, that could have just been Fluttershy's demure nature at work. "Oh!" I blinked in shock, the memory of Fluttershy clinging to Stormwing invading my mind's eye. "That was the start of it?"
"Well,"
she murmured hesitantly as she blushed brightly, looking down at the ground passing beneath her trotting hoofs. This, in turn, caused her hair to hide her face as she practically whispered the rest.
"It did for me."
"Fluttershy uses diabetes. It's super effective." "Aww!" I couldn't help it. I hugged Fluttershy without so much as a second thought, causing us both to stumble awkwardly. I didn't care if we fell over, I just wanted to hug and squee forever in that moment. "I never thought you could get cuter."
Thanks?"
Fluttershy still not on physical contact. Not sure why, practically everything she did screamed, "Hug me, I'm adorable, after all." No problem. So, what, you got swept off your feet by the noble and courageous Stormwing? I asked, still quite curious. And have been gazing from afar ever since? He must have made quite the first impression, but alas, he led the life of a soldier, and his cold heart had no time for romance.
Well, no,
she admitted with a laugh, amused by my dramatic splurge.
That wasn't the case at all. I did not actually get to see him again until he saved Ponyville from Trixie and the Shadow Ponies. We got to speak at length then, and he helped me get the animals, who were well enough to take care of themselves, to safety. Did you know he likes bats?
No, but that doesn't surprise me. He probably relates to them. I let out a snort before shaking my head. I mean, I never figured him for an animal pony, but don't pretend to know everything.
Oh, yes, he very much is.
She nodded with a pensive stare into the distance.
It's almost sad to watch him, you know.
I blinked, unsure of how to respond to her question. I mimicked her 1,000-yard stare, wondering what would make her say such a thing. After a moment, I took an educational guess at what she was getting at. You mean how he's been dedicated to something he's not happy doing? I looked back at her, frowning a tad at her affirming nod. Yeah, well, as bad as it sounds, this happens a lot back home. Very few humans are strangers to such situations.
Oh, that's awful.
The concept seemed to overall sadden her.
Even you?
Definitely. For once, I wasn't smiling or laughing or thinking of smart-ass remarks. As happy and carefree as I was, life's bitter moments still leave their scars, and no amount of laughter makes them go away. Sad as it is, though, those scars are what makes or breaks a person. Safe to say, I sure don't feel broken.
Oh, why?
Fluttershy glanced my way, pausing in her tracks and causing me to do the same. I sighed. It was a deep, painful subject to talk about Earth's really brutal realities to ponies. I mean, sure, they loved hearing about culture, human comedy, tragic plays. I figured Romeo and Juliet was tame enough. I was wrong. I damn near killed Rarity. And foods. The cruelties of humanity, though, had been avoided. Even Luna didn't talk about them. Like me, it just wasn't fun to think about it in a serious way. Fluttershy, I assure you want to hear this, I murmured, never lifting my eyes from the ground. To her credit, she gave it a serious consideration, as though she were genuinely and rightly scared to hear what I had to offer. That was actually the biggest reason I consented when she eventually nodded. If she had simply scoffed at my warnings, I wouldn't have given her anything, but her hesitation told me she knew enough to handle a slight glimpse. Great things come from my world, Fluttershy, but great comes with a two-sided coin that lands on one side as often as it does the other. I took off walking again, giving my body something to do as I rambled with my eyes straight forward. Remember back at Twilight's library, when I first got there, I said humans will fight for what they believe in?
Yes.
Her frightened tone made me want to forget about the whole thing. I should have just kept my damn mouth shut, but I was compelled to give her a bit of insight on myself. Well, that doesn't just mean violence. See, humans don't live harmoniously. For every person willing to help a neighbor, there's a human out there willing to steal from his neighbor, even if it means that neighbor will go hungry. I decided more cigarettes were in order, and lit one up. So you can't just freely trust everyone you meet. Because of this, society has to impose rules. Rules that hold back everyone just to impede the humans that believe only in themselves and what they want. She steeled herself somewhat, steadying her voice as she replied. That was actually quite relieving.
And no ponies thought that would be a bad idea?
Bad or not, it was necessary, I told her.
taking a long drag of my cigarette before medically holding it off to the side so that I could speak freely. Take me, for example, Fluttershy. I've done things I'm not proud of, because I have to watch out for myself. Here, I can be loving and trusting all day long, because I don't have to worry about being hurt or betrayed. I can lend something of mine out to some pony I've never even met before, because I know they'll bring it back. Earth? A line of people would form up to tell me how foolish that is.
All because there's no trust, she murmured.
I blinked, somewhat stymied at just how simple that statement made the complex and convoluted human condition seem. Actually, yeah, no trust. Still, you don't need to worry about Storm. That's not what makes him do what he does.
No, he just wants to help ponies,
she sighed, her volume picking up a tad as we shifted away from the dark subject.
Even if it does not make him happy.
Right, and his selflessness has helped to make Equestria what it is. I let out a sigh, drawing off my cigarette shortly thereafter as we arrived at a roundabout. The leftmost turn would take me to the school where a certain trio of crusading lunatic fillies would no doubt attack me on sight. Well, I'm going to learn how to read. You take care. She nodded, too distracted by our conversation to completely register my words. A frown found its way on my face as my brow sank from chagrin. I reached out a hoof and set it on her shoulder. Hey! She startled a tad before looking up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Firewall. You take care too.
Will do, just, don't let those saws get a hold of you, okay? I frowned, letting my concern show itself. She blinked, somewhat confused.
I don't understand. Should I not think about it?
Never said that. I shook my head before taking another puff of my cigarette. Just don't let them haunt you. That's what makes humans give up and lose faith. Just don't let it happen to you. You're too special for that, right? The wonderment on her face was endearing, but not as much as the smile she ended up giving me.
All right, you know, your world must miss you sorely. I hope it's okay without you.
Nah, it'll be fine. I gave a hard-hearted laugh as I turned around, dread gripping my chest as I let her words sink in. Later, Shy.
Goodbye.
She began happily cantering towards the town center. I took solace in that, her having taken the briefest of insight into humans and coming out of it as happy and carefree as she had been before. Me, on the other hand, not as much. Over 2 months of being away from Earth had led to some pretty awful fears. It wasn't like I was regretting being in Equestria, but more than once I found my thoughts of friends and family struggling against the rigors of life on Earth. Just didn't seem fair that I got to kick it all the gravy train, and they had to continue busting their asses just to make ends meet. Best to worry about it later, I told myself. With that, I finished my cigarette and continued on my way to Ponyville's elementary school. I kept an eye out for little orange wings or cotton candy-colored manes, but to my surprise, almost disappointment even, I safely made it to the door without being tackled. Then the bell rang just as I went to open it. Before it had even finished sounding off, the door was flung open, knocking me onto my back as 1,000 tiny hooves ran me over. I kicked, screamed, cursed, and failed, but it was all for naught. The tide had me in its pathetic grasp, and all I could do was suffer all the merciless foals trampled the hell out of me. As the last of the demon spawn finally crossed over me, I fruitlessly attempted to roll back over. A voice penetrated the agony. "Firewall?" Applebloom. I opened an eye and aimed it right at her as she neared. "What you doing on the ground?" If you could hear how incredulous she sounded, it was the damnedest thing ever that I laid down in front of the door and let dozens of kids make an attempt at my life. Sure, if I had done it willingly, she'd have had all the right in the world to sound accusing. But I hadn't, therefore she didn't. "Developing new torture techniques," I groaned as I rolled back over, finally making my way back up to my hooves. "I think I've got a winner." "Huh?" Her big innocent eyes peered at me, confusion doubling the amount of "daw" they would normally put out. "Nothing," I started to say before looking up to see Miss Cheerilee exiting behind her student. "Cheerilee!" They were kind enough to take me inside as I tended my new tiny hoof-shaped bruises. No serious damage, really, but my pride was not taking the close brush with death via fillies very gracefully. Luckily, they didn't bring it up, so I made a full recovery. After I got all washed up, I broke it down for them. Needless to say, the initial reaction didn't go well. The explanation alone was awkward, but even after they believed it, Cheerilee wasn't too enthusiastic about letting it happen. Applebloom, on the other hand, was blown away after I proved it to her with a piece of scratch paper turned upside down. That's... you burn books to get smart?" She was amazed by this. I don't think I've ever impressed anybody as much as I had her with that single trick. The gears in her head were already turning, and Cheerilee was quick on the nipping out of that bud. Just as the filly turned to ask the question we both knew was coming, the teacher pony quickly headed her off with the answer. "No, Applebloom, that's not something you can do, so please let's not get our hopes up." Poor Applebloom never had a chance to even inhale. "Can I keep my hopes up?" I poked my bottom lip out. "Really, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't just for kicks or something, but I'm just tired of sitting around doing nothing to help. I just don't have time to learn all the basics, so, I need a shortcut and stuff. Seriously, this is pretty important." Cheerilee shook her head. "I would love to help you, Firewall, but the school is not provided with the amount of bits to buy books with." "Wait, is that the only reason?" I perked up, remembering that I was dating a princess who likely had more than enough connections to more than cover me on this. I know, exploiting my romantic relationships is bad form, but I was really in a bind here. If I could replace the books or find a way to compensate for them, would it be okay? "I suppose so, but if you could replace them, then what—" She began to ask before I interrupted her. "Don't worry about it, I've got friends in high places. This just happens to be the quickest and most convenient way for me to get what I need," I assured her with a smile. "Promise, you won't miss those books for long, barring catastrophic circumstances, like floods or anarchy." Cheerilee smirked before rolling her eyes. "I'm sure I won't be missing just a few books should such events take place in either case. Very well, Firewall, take as many as you need. I'm aware of your relationship with Princess Luna, as long as you promise to help the school out." "Cross my heart, hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye," I cried with an enthusiastic eye gorge. "What you talking about, Miss Cheerilee? He's mean to the princess, she won't help him," Applebloom protested cutely. "I've seen them get into fights." "Applebloom, hush and let the big ponies talk," I cried, mimicking her big sister for good measure. "Why does every pony keep saying that?" She stamped a hoof in frustration. I'm surprised I didn't need to switch to sugar substitutes after that. Cheerilee gently chuckled before shaking her head. "Don't worry, Applebloom. I've heard that Princess Luna is just as mean to him. Now, can you be a helping pony and pick out some books that might help our friend here?" "Yes, Miss Cheerilee," she grumbled, glaring down at the floor as she approached the shelf. After several seconds of contemplation, she grabbed a few books with her mouth, expertly tossing them onto her head and back before returning and stacking them beside me. If I had tried that nonsense, I'd have broken at least 2 bones. I was impressed at how easily she hefted them around. They weren't small books. To be honest, though, Earth ponies are much stronger than Pegasi or unicorns, as in unnaturally strong. "Now, what did you bring us?" the Instructante asked with a gentle smirk. "Remember, Mr. Firewall can't read our language." "Mr. Firewall." Applebloom went through the motions, pointing at each book and describing them. 2 of them were entry-level education material, 2 of them were immediate, and she got a highly creative by bringing me a Thesaurus dictionary and an abridged encyclopedia. I'm not making this up. She called it a Ponypedia Equestria. I choked down the urge to laugh in her face. Sorry, that was just a little too pious and sunny, even for me. I took them with a big smile and immediately ran outside to avoid burning the floors as I did my thing. Applebloom was awestruck after having seen it in action for the larger books. She went to go get more books for me, but Trixie quickly put a stop to that nonsense. What was really crazy was that the first storybook I absorbed was translated for me. It wasn't until I absorbed the study books that I was able to get grasp on the language and could start reading them the way they were written. Magic, how does it work? So after all that nonsense went down, I decided I needed to stop wasting time and mossy on over to Twilight's tree pad. Applebloom made me swear that I would do it again for Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo. Figured it was the least I could do, since she was such a big help. I said my goodbye and took off for the library, making a quick stop to grab a snack on the run from one of the kiosk shops at Town Square. They had really cleaned up and repaired the crater, so it was business as usual, nothing much to blab about. When I finally got there, I could hear Twilight yelling something from within. It was going to be a fun visit, I told myself. While I couldn't make out the words, I could tell her anxiety was coming from impatience rather than frustration. See, when Twilight works on something that she can't actually crack, she doesn't just get mad. She gets ballistic. It's quite impressive, actually. Luckily for me, this wasn't the case. Thus I had no qualms about beating on the door like I was trying to get away from a murderer. "Dude!" I cried as Spike opened the door. He was quick on the reply. He had been getting better at snarkily doing the last week or two. I was so proud. "We are not buying anything." "You fire-breathing freak!" I ridiculously roared it, with a dramatic hoof extended right at him. "Look who's talking, Chief." He countered with a laugh. He said Chief. Hear that? That's my chest swelling with pride. Twilight had heard enough of our nonsense and bellowed her rebuttal from the study. "Spike, Firewall, stop verbally sparring at the door. In or out, you two?" Party pooper. I winked at Spike to let him know I was going to harass her a bit before purposefully commenting aloud. "She ruins everything." "She's like a blight upon fun," he agreed, barely able to keep himself from sputtering in laughter. "Excuse me?" Twilight's head poked from around the corner, threatening to set us both aflame with her glare. To my shame, I panicked a bit and couldn't think of anything to avert the oncoming disaster. What was it with ponies and their ability to damn near kill with their looks, anyway? "I said you're light upon one." He pointed out to his chest as if to say he was one, which was stretching it a bit, but Twilight was thankfully too distracted to take notice. "Good save," I whispered. Sadly, my whisper wasn't quite enough to await Twilight's ears. She's a sharp cookie, you know. So anyway, we trotted our silly selves into the study, where Twilight was busy taking samples out of a black globe that was wreathed in a soft white light. "Ugh, you bring out the worst in him, you know that?" she snapped, not even looking away from her work. "Don't blame me. I can't help it if awesome rubs off on Spike." I pointed the hoof at Spike as if it were all his fault. To be fair, he shouldn't have been so impressionable, am I right? Whatever. She glanced back at me, snorting a bit of anger flames. Spike, since you're already up, I need you to go down to Quilts and Sofas and to pick up another bundle, and grab an extra bottle of ink while you're at it. I trotted over to the samples and watched as she tilted her head in curiosity. Because I'm stupid, I reached out to pick one of the samples up, only to get my hoof slapped. Totally justified. I pouted at Twilight's glaring face, only to realize just how out of sorts she actually was. Her unkempt hair, the red tinge along the edges of her eyes, and the dark circles under them were all telling me that Twilight was stressing over this. Stressing and nearby breaking point. That's the second one today. Spike did not look too happy with having to leave again. Poor little guy. He was too young to have a full-time job, if you ask me. I've had lots of work to do and still plenty more yet. She raised her voice 2 octaves and 6 decibels. I actually flinched, quite unused to frazzled sparkle. Now stop arguing and move your scary tail. This research is important. Spike bolted for the door, just as bothered by the reaction as I was. I went to say bye, but he was too fast for me. Door shut before I could even take a breath. He'd be back soon anyway, I figured. As soon as the door shut, I turned to Twilight with a concerned visage. Wow, I rubbed the back of my neck, a little nervous about asking. You okay? Twilight didn't even look at me. She simply continued retrieving samples until she had a dozen or so. I'm fine. Wrong answer. I stepped in front of her, frowning at the impatient glare I got in return. Now, I know a lot of things have managed to scare me in the past, but Twilight wasn't one of them. She's a little too cute for that. Look in the mirror. When's the last time you slept? This morning, she roared as she moved to step around me. I moved to compensate. Simple as that. Stop yelling. Christ almighty, you need a break. I immediately began nudging her towards the kitchen. She pushed back, but she wasn't what you would call, built? So yeah, she was forced to obey through means of sheer physical dominance. That's how I was sure that she wasn't thinking straight. She only had, 60 spells that could have dealt with me? Yeah, she needed a timeout. Come on, let me make you a tea. I just had some, she cried, as she braced herself along the entrance to the kitchen, stubbornly shoving me back. When I gently reached out with some unicorn magic to individually pluck the hoofs off the wall, she countered by snatching a nearby book off the wall with her own magic. With ire in her eyes, she began to swat me with the book until I had finally had enough. Twilight, I swear friendship is magic, I growled, lowering the tone of my voice to a threatening one. If you don't chill out right now, I'm going to walk out to Sugar Cube Corner and inform Pinky that you need a party to help relax. The pupils in her eyes shrunk to the size of pennies, which is big deal for ponies, as the horror of that threat set in. See, Pinkie Pie parties will wreck your plans for the rest of the day. One does not simply tell Pinkie Pie there will be no party. By God, you will get your party one way or another, and if she has to move mountains to get it done, your best hope is to have not liked ever rest where it was in the first place. Somebody get that rock some change of address, some papers and briefcase. You wouldn't. She stopped pummeling me with a book as she fell back onto one of the kitchen benches. I would, I uttered, looking her dead in the eye as I fought the urge to burst out into laughter. I'd tell her to bring streamers, too. The frustration reached a boil, and she was forced to cry out helplessly as she maneuvered herself onto the bench more completely. Ugh! Look at you, all relaxed and comfy. I gushed at her as she ground her teeth in vexation. Hey now, relaxed. Smiles? She bared her teeth at me. Grrr! Close enough. I shrugged as I plucked a towel from the drawer and tossed it over the face. Here, you don't interrupt well. I can relate. Thanks, she said begrudgingly as she used it to wipe her bleary eyes. No problem. Let me get the tea rolling. I set to the task, smirking when I heard her yawn so hard that she had to wipe the water from her eyes. You always let the most epic yawns. You're like the tyrant of tired, the furor of fatigue. How about supreme casino of sleep? Twilight can never resist the urge to alliterate in a colorful fashion. Despite her participation, she still face-hoofed before groaning impatiently. Firewall, I know you're concerned, but this is all-important task I've been entrusted with. And the quickest way to fail Celestia is to work yourself sick. I reminded her as I walked over, holding the teapot with magic as I powered the fireball underneath it. Really, girl, you look almost as bad as you did during the Battle of Shadows. What? That seemed to catch her off guard. For several seconds she said nothing. She blinked tiredly at my statement set in, more than just a little disturbed. Really? No, actually, you look worse. I lied as I set everything down and began scouring the kitchen for its coveted sugar repository. The tea began whistling just as I found it. I'm pretty fast with getting it to boil. Less wounds, more stress. Seriously, you look like death warrant over. Or maybe just death. After adding a generous scoop into mine, I called out to Twilight for her desired amount of sweetness. 1 lump or 2, Miss Pony. Thwack! I looked back over my shoulder in shock to see her face on the bench, out like a light. Yeah, that was the sound of her skull likely destroying itself upon the treated wood bench shortly after losing consciousness to mental exhaustion. I didn't mean on your head, Twilight, I informed the unconscious equine with a sigh. I chugged my still nigh-boiling tea, didn't even cinch my tongue, before moving over to give the prone purple pony a precarious prodding poke. Jerk, now I'm going to be all hyper from that tea. Twilight murmured something in her sleep and rolled over. Had I not caught her with my magic, she would have experienced a second impact, this time involving her entire body and the floor. I noticed a slight groove in the bench where her horn had viciously attacked the wooden furniture, mercilessly carving its shape into it. That had to hurt. Horns ain't exactly like fingernails. They have feelings too, and they let you know when their feelings are hurt by sending egregious amounts of agony straight into your brain. It's fun. With a chuckle, I threw her on my back, ever so gently made my way up the stairs. My eyes trailed over the notes she had been taking, and I noticed a couple of curious things. Firstly, that I could actually read the damn wingdings. Secondly, there were a lot of cross-referencing with her notes on the Manpolon, as though the two were related. I actually couldn't stop myself from forgetting what I was doing and began to read right there, but I soon felt a wetness developing on my shoulder from Twilight drooling on me. God! I grimaced and cantered up the stairs, resisting the urge to throw her at her bed as soon as I entered her room. To my credit, I simply set her down and threw her cover over her prone plot. I did, however, use the same cover to wipe at the offending salvia she had been so freaking generous to gift me with. As I cantered back down the stairs, withholding my urge to stop for more spit wiping, I magicked her book full of notes over to me and began scouring them, glazing over the calculations. There were several spots where I just had to turn the page because I couldn't bear trying to digest what she was getting at. There was this huge part on how it related to Pinkie Pie's pinky sense and how she was able to travel at insane speeds or seemingly teleport. It was kind of funny. She actually hit a logical flaw early on
and kept trying to compensate for it before having gave up and crossing out at least 7 pages of hard analytic work dedicated of ruthlessly explaining the Pinkiest Piacus. All that aside, I just wanted so bad to be lazy and slurp it up via absorption spell. But alas, I didn't have a second set of notes to spare, and I was not about to try Twilight's book replication trick without having had some guidance on it first. Besides, it was outside my affinity and would likely drain the hell out of me even if I was familiar enough with it. Anyway, here's a summary of what Twilight had. The shadow magic was a watered-down Immanpolon that was diluted enough to be usable outside of just snuffing other magic out. A simpler form of it, actually. With this more easily understood form of magic to work with, Twilight was able to link normal, everyday pony magic to Immanpolon, and actually unravel the mystery of the magic-disturbing substance. We already knew that Immanpolon was just a magic-sucking black hole, but we didn't know why. At least we didn't until Twilight happened. Madame O.P. Sparkle figured it out, which was why she was entrusted with it. She's awesome like that. Anyway, brace yourself. Immanpolon was a focus, or in layman's terms, a point to where magic is attracted where being casted in a spell or enchantment, etc., etc. For those of you that are technologically inclined, think of it as a magical capacitator where it's all stored before it's used. Anything can be a focus: horns, hooves, tails, even inmate objects when enchanted properly. Some are better than others and blah blah blah. Magical projections via horns. Anyway, the difference between Immanpolon and other such focal points was that it wasn't doing anything with magic. It was just sitting on it, pulling in more and more without ever giving it direction. Consequences of this? Ugh, I know, magic babble. It was boring as hell, but I was so stuck on wanting to help that I didn't care. Anyway, the side effects of this magic magnetism was that you couldn't use magic around it. It would disturb the geese. That's what Twilight calls it. From the context, I think it's a programming behind a spell or enchantment, probably, of any nearby magic. Any spells that would become free-floating magic that gets absorbed, and anything already focused, like a magic music box, would become inert as long as it stayed within range. Blah, technical. I know, but it was still pretty fascinating after you got it. I mean, the process was boring as hell, but what this eventually led to was actually very intriguing. Because Twilight was able to use the shadow magic to link an understanding between Immanpolon and the magic that every pony used. It meant that there was a formula that could be broken down and understood. She had done a lot of cross-referencing with other nodes on Immanpolon and had devised a series spell that could potentially undo Immanpolon's focal points. She was wary of attempting it, though. From what I understood, taking the highly concentrated magic and dispersing it might lead to explosive results. Long story short, Twilight Einstein Sparkle had just theoretically created the magic A-bomb. Nothing can go wrong with this, ever. Well, damn son, I exclaimed, aimlessly chewing on a pencil. I do that when I read. As I let that roll around in my head. Huh? I had not heard Spike come in, nor did I hear him shut the door, and I certainly wasn't aware of his standing 3 feet away when he spoke up. What I did know was that I nearly crapped myself when he made his grunt of general confusion. "Aye!" I squealed, jumping back and clutching my heart with a hoof. "Don't do that, man!" "What?" Spike danced back a step, nearly dropping his armful of quills and ink. "Like high-strung, are we?" Shut up!" I gasped, choking a tad on a piece of pencil I had half swallowed. See, that's why I don't scare people.
it leads to this kind of nonsense. Wow, does every pony that studies that stuff get all bent out of shape? He set down his purchases before scratching at his head. Sorry, I don't care well. I coughed a few more times, trying to clear my throat. After some gross noises and a couple of gasps, the wooden assailant was dislodged and popped out of my mouth. It beautifully soared through the air before clattering against the floor just in front of the young dragon. Nasty! He grimaced, shying away from it before blinking and remembering something. Oh, Applebloom is looking for you. Said she got you another book you might need. Yuck! The more attention you give it, the more power it has over you, I declared, shaking a fisted hoof in a manly, mighty fashion. Do not fear it, Spike. Whatever, just go find Applebloom. I told her I'd send you her way, but it's starting to get dark, and... He continued to stare at the offending bile-covered pencil, his scales paling in revulsion. And please clean that up. After staring at him as though we were a pansy, he totally was, I levitated the fearsome piece of wood and graphite into the trash can and threw a napkin over the spot. After wiping around some, I made short work of disposing it, then gently bonked Spike on the head for being a squeamish and headed for the door. Twilight's asleep, I warned him. Wake her up at your own risk. Psst! More like, let her sleep at your own risk, he responded, rolling his eyes as he crossed his arms. Still, I'll take the chance. Good man. I smirked at him before opening the door. Peace. Rather than aimlessly search about for Applebloom, I decided to head for Sweet Apple Acres and see about beating up Applejack for fun while I waited for her to show up. It wasn't that important that I get this book, but I didn't want to disappoint Applebloom. Besides, AJ would hit me if I came to Ponyville without dropping in, her and Dashie both. I was a little surprised that I hadn't been tackled by Dash already. Regardless of who I was looking for, the pony that found me was not who I was expecting. Guess who? No, Octavia doesn't live in Ponyville. At first I thought it was Luna wrapped in a hooded cloak coming down the road. That was fair, yet incorrect assumption that I made based off the blue hoofs and a dim lightning rod on the road. When the mysterious pony pulled back the hood, though, I was surprised to see that it was none other than the J&PT. For a few seconds we just sort of stared at each other, having stopped to stare. Me in shock, her in contemplation. Common sense eventually kicked the door down. I wish I could do that more often, and told me to play it cool. So I did what was natural. My beloved Trixie, you're looking fantastic, I gushed, cantering over to give her a hug. She stiffened attack at the show of affection, but began to laugh nonetheless. I was telling a bold-faced lie, by the way. She looked run down. Whether it was stress or actually wear and tear, I had no clue. But she looked about as rough as Twilight had. She had dark circles under her eyes like no pony's business, and her make-up was running a tad. I had not known she even wore make-up before then. Yes, the great and powerful Trixie always looks smashing, she agreed tiredly, hesitant before patting my back and breaking away from the hug. But of course. I flashed my best smile at her before letting it fade, my concern for her finally showing through. You're not endangering yourself by coming out to see me, are you? She opened her mouth for a moment before shutting it again. I don't think she was entirely surprised by my concern, but it seemed to have touched her nonetheless. After she composed herself again, she smiled. No, I'm not. Master David has actually sent me here to speak to you, so you need not to worry about me. I began to respond before taking a sniff of the air. It had a metallic smell to it. It took me a second to place it, but I eventually made the connection for ionization. Electricity. Right. I subtly glanced about. And what did he send you to speak about? I'm in good health. Is he? I hope not. Actually, that's not true. I really don't wish ill to any pony or person. Come with me, please, she murmured softly. Trixie nodded her head to the side, motioning me to walk with her. I complied, even so I knew it was leading us further away from town and assistance should the situation go bad. I didn't know what David's motives were, but Trixie definitely didn't want to see anything bad happen, or so I hoped. So we walked in silence for a few minutes as the cold night air swept through. I was kept warm, but Trixie was more vulnerable to the chill of the late evening. I stepped a little closer and turned the heat up like a gentle cold, causing her to smile gratefully in my direction before finally coming out with it. "He wants to offer you a way home," she said, with a hopeful smile that she aimed directly towards the ground. That got my attention. I looked at her in shock as I gawked her sincerity. Whether or not it was true, she certainly believed it and thought that it would make me happy to hear it. Really? I was doing a bit of soul-searching to see if it should make me happy, whether I let it or not. Why? Because Equestria is in danger, she said in all seriousness. I was skeptical, to say the least, especially on the part where it involved me going home. Still, I was willing to hear her out. "Is this more about the Manpolon?" I narrowed my eyes at her. "Because Twilight just figured out how to undo it." "No, it's not—" "What?" Trixie stopped, her visage degenerating into a stare of horror. "You're bluffing," I face-huffed. That was not something I should have let out of the bag. Seriously, my mouth needs a physical, mental, and magical filter on it. I shook my head and sighed, deciding to see it through to the end. Nope, she's figured out how to create the stuff and reverse engineering it. A method to break it all apart, I admitted, pulling out a cigarette and lighting up. Turns out it's just higher, more complex state of magic that overrides lesser magic around it, kinda sucks it up for itself. "Oh, Fireball, that's not good. That's not good at all." Trixie was shaking her head. This shouldn't be happening so soon. What do we do?" The smell of ionized air got a little stronger, and I began to pull one of the awesome moments where the good guy points out how the bad guys aren't going to get the drop on him by pointing out the ambushes in the shadows. Yeah, it felt as awesome as it looks. Just in the movies. Stupid, I know, but yeah, awesome. We as in you and me? Or as we in you and Commander Starlight? I smiled, all bright and proud of myself. Sure enough, a rustle from a nearby tree, followed by the hairs standing up on my neck, bellied an approaching sky archon. She floated down in front of us, her red eyes downcast with, well, I wasn't sure, actually. Whether it was sorrow, disappointment, or just a simple poker face, I couldn't tell. I just knew she wasn't happy. The wind picked up considerably, violently whipping at her midnight black mane and stirring her ire. She responded by giving a strong flap of her wing against the flow of air, and without a moment's hesitation the cutting breeze stopped altogether. "Very nice." I winked at her with a smirk. "So, let's cut to the chase then. David wants to send me home. Yes, I know you never said that, but he wouldn't make that offer out of the kind cockles in his heart. He doesn't strike me as a good Samaritan, after all. I'm going to assume that you're going to try forcibly take me if I don't play along." "Little too smart for your own good, aren't you?" Starlight stared at me impassively. "If you knew, why did you play along?" "Yeah, well, a funny thing about my smartness," I spluttered with a laugh, blushing somewhat. "I really didn't figure it out until 10 seconds ago." "That's unfortunate for you." Starlight raised an eyebrow, allowing the slightest of smirks to creep onto her face. Trixie frowned and let her ears droop as she lowered her head. "You don't want to leave?" "Not especially." I cracked my neck before stretching my back legs. So yeah, let's get this over with. Starlight released that electrical charge she had been holding on to just as I caught fire and yanked Trixie in between us. She was quick enough to shield herself from the magic, which saved my conscience of a beating, let me tell you. I then shoved her out of the way and dashed straight at Starlight, knowing her to be an artillery archon. Getting in her face would keep her pretty well disabled and keep Trixie from using big explosive tricks. Unless she decided she wasn't too afraid of some friendly fire. Luckily, she seemed to value Starlight enough to not explodificate us. The great and powerful Trixie pulled through yet again. "Sorry, Starlight. Hotshot sends his regards," I called out before skidding at the ground with my burning hoofs to kick up a spray of fiery sand at her. Neat trick I adapted from Winter Sky. Starlight wasn't too predictable, she just wasn't extremely fast. She had to blast away the debris with her wings just to keep from getting burned and blinded. Unfortunately for her, this kept her on the ground. Fortunately for me, I wasn't that difficult to cut through the buffering winds and take her forelegs out from under her with a sweep of my tail. Winter Sky doesn't like the idea of artillery archons and sword archons. Why? Because they have weaknesses. Had I tried this on a sword archon, I'd have been getting my hoof stuffed into my own face. But because Starlight had focused on that channeling of rather weather power, it was almost, well, no, it just was easy. Beforehand, I thought he had just been the Ali army of ponies. At that point, though, yeah, made perfect sense. With her legs taken out from under her, the entire array of options was to consider what she would be dreaming about for the next 2 hours of unscheduled sleep. I would have recommended some aspirin for the concussion she got from one back hoof of mine to her forehead. Well, one down. I looked back at Trixie. Care to surrender? Shit! I dodged the line of energy sent by the great and powerful Trixie. It was a close thing, too. Whatever it was, it grazed my flank and numbed everything in my body for a few seconds. I couldn't even feel my tongue against the roof of my mouth. Quite disorienting. I was still capable of swinging my head her way and spraying a great big wave of fire her way, causing her to retreat as she cast spells to protect herself. "I believe you were saying something about surrender?" I heard Azure Flora's demure voice ring out. Then my fire winked out, which rather bothered me, to be honest. Probably something to do with the immanpolant chains that wrapped around my neck with no warning whatsoever. I grabbed hold of it and twirled my neck to get it off me, but it coiled faster than I could spin. Then it decided I didn't need air and tightened considerably, choking me senseless. "But, Mr. Chain, I would like to breathe." "No, Mr. Firewall, that won't be necessary. You can, however, take a nap." "Gurgh!" I splurked sagely as it tightened, my eyes searching about frantically for the white and blue pony. Had she not stepped out from a nearby bush, frowning sadly, that would have been game. As it was, though, I had all the time I needed to find a small rock along the road and kick it right at her. Crazy as it was, this desperate attempt was just to keep me in the game. It had nothing to do with winning. My hopes and dreams soared through the air like a swan with no wings. With luck granted to me a certain green Pegasus, it bounced off her nose, carrying enough speed to actually make a thunk of impact. Boink! I wasn't out of the forest yet, but she lost enough focus to stop strangling me. I immediately galloped right over for her, dragging the chain behind me as she shook the stars out of her eyes and lifted a hoof. Just before I could tackle her, the chain tightened and began to pull me back. I gurgled again, just inches away from her face, forcing myself closer. She stared at me fiercely as I inched closer, my vision starting to swim. I guess she wanted to be all bat-flank by not stepping away, but that turned out to be a mistake for her. With all my heart and might, I chomped down
onto her hair and let the chain yank us both away. Now poor Zuflora is not an experienced combatant. I guess she never got around to learning how to fight in 1,000 years. Me? I've been getting my fight on for the last 10 few weeks. So not only was I in the best shape I've ever been in, it was also fresh on my mind. Long story short, she got 2 hoofs to the face and a nap time spot right beside Starlight. Best news for me? Oh, Trixie! I got to my hoofs and twirled the chain in one hoof. Guess what I got? I expected fear, shock, horror, something that gave credit to my advantage over her. She didn't give me one. Instead, she just took off and forced me to chase her. Get back here and I'll take your beatings like a mare, I cried after her. She completely ignored this request, however, and continued with her attempt at fleeing. She took off from the road into some bushes, which slowed her down considerably. Me? I had no problems powering through the brambles. When I heard the opening of one of those thunderous portals, though, I panicked and stepped it up. I caught up with her just as that black gap in space widened and exuded a magnificent half-spiked dive with a twist. Okay, so maybe not that elaborate. We'll never know for certain. Probably happened just like that. Gotcha! I laughed as I caught her, sending us both into a tumble. I smiled in triumph as I hugged her neck. I win. Not only that, but I get to tie you up with a chain. Do you know how many sick bronies out there would kill to do that to you? The line would be massive. Get him! Get him now! She shrieked as she fruitlessly struggled against me. Firewall? I heard a timid voice call out. What's going on? I looked up at the black portal just in time to see the nightmare fly out of it. I snatched the chain out of pure reaction and swung it at that stupid cloud. It still had a few coils around my neck, but it had enough length to pass through its target and cause it to shriek in pain as it retreated a tad. I looked to the source of the small voice and saw Applebloom carrying a book inside of a saddlebag. She must have heard the commotion and followed me here, thinking something was wrong. Unfortunately for her, she was right. Applebloom, get out of here! I yelled at her as I jumped back from the nightmare. Get to Ponyville, now! She wasted no time and immediately took off. Get the witness! The nightmare bellowed at Trixie before honing back in on me. I swung the chain again and again, but it swirled evasively and directed itself onto a collision course with me. I braced myself for an impact that never arrived. At least not physically. Within moments, my mind was on fire from the screaming invasion I was suddenly undergoing. The nightmare was possessing me. I tried to master the spell that had blocked it out before, but my own weapon had been my undoing, and I couldn't conjure it up, with the chain of a manpulon hanging off of me. Though it was causing the nightmare great pain to push past the chain's burning touch, it was also giving it the advantage it needed to take hold of me. I felt my hoofs lift off the ground, and though I was mentally kicking and screaming, just as the nightmare was, I could do nothing to stop it from happening. No, 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 no! Get it off! My mouth began screaming as control of my body was surrendered to the nightmare. My hoofs began yanking on the chain, causing it to spin along my fur coat as we eventually tore free from it. Get it off! After that, we fell to the ground and panted loudly. The pain had to have been excruciating for the nightmare to have worn her out so thoroughly, but she shook it off after a few minutes of laying around. Finally, we got to our hoofs and breathed in deeply. It seems you played right into my hoofs, and I know I have what was rightfully mine from the start. I didn't respond. I was too horror-struck. She threw our head back and began laughing. She seemed to do what whenever she nabbed a new body. Manically, as flame erupted all around us, setting fire to bush and tree alike.
The fire then tore away from its fuel and enveloped us as the possession finally began warping my body. I grew in size as armor began to form and harden around nearly every inch of me. I felt a tightening sensation in my back as my form continued to twist. As terrified as I was, though, I was too distracted by the sensation of power. Even from a prisoner's point of view, I could not let help but get caught up in the flow of power surging within us. It wasn't that different than when Celestia had given me that incredible rush of magic, only this time it wasn't tiring or painful. It was exhilarating. Do not advise trying it out if you find yourself easily addicted to sensations or euphoria. Ah, what a rush! She pranced on the tips of our hooves for a second as the fire died away, leaving a scorched crater all about us. She dropped after a few seconds of this and considered her actions with a tap to our chin. "Wow, you really are a giddy one, aren't you? Ha!" Yeah, the nightmare fills in the gaps of itself with the personality of whatever it possesses. If it's feral, she becomes animalistic. If it's Celestia, she becomes regal and superior. If it's me, she gets, well, you can guess as much. "Not talking today, tough guy?" She pouted our lips at nothing. "Come on, surely you can appreciate being outplayed. And don't fret, it's not so bad being with me." "Leave me alone, I have nothing to say." "Oh, whatever. Ha! You've nothing to say?" She began to titter uncontrollably. "Please! That's a first, if I ever heard one. That's about as common as Celestia dropping a filthy earth pony joke." I snorted mirthfully despite myself. I know it wasn't even that good of a joke, but I couldn't help it. A bad joke dropped during a harrowing experience is funny in and of itself, and this definitely counts as harrowing. "That's better," she sneered before stretching out our wings. I guess it was a package deal, so much for a fanon. By the way, this is a little off topic, but I had never been so emotionally conflicted before in my life. I was finally sporting a genuine pair of wings. Finally, and I couldn't even use the damn things. The pagan wing shrug gods have frowned upon me yet again. Anyway, back to our little mental foray. Forgive me for not leaping for joy. I'm not having what most people call a great day. Hell, you probably turned us into a girl too. You didn't, did you? "I don't know," she laughed, before checking our hoof with a smirk. "Oh, black armor. Very nice. Let's get a better look, shall we?" "Stop talking to the voices in your head. It's unhealthy." Oh, the irony. She summoned up a mirror and illuminated the area with a bit of fire for us to see the latest Firewall developments. Oh, Celestia, we looked like an actual nightmare wearing war barding. As tall as Celestia, as black as sin, and with fire slipping out of every crevice in the armor, eyes included. She twisted and turned a bit to admire every inch, but as far as ponies go, we seemed rather gender neutral. Androgynous. Somehow I feel worse about that. "Oh, shut up. We look fantastic," she cooed at the mirror. I could feel my general self-admiring arrogance oozing right through her. The difference was I did it for humor's sake. She, on the other hand, was embracing it. "Admit it." "I'd say you look a little on the fat side." "Don't forget, foal, this body has been in your care, not mine." Yeah, I knew that insult wouldn't work. I still wanted to try. "Well, it wasn't that fat before taking on a second passenger." "Well, now it's returned to its rightful owner and has never looked better." She winked at the reflection, her narcissism threatening to gag me. Was this how people reacted when I did stuff like that? Some rustling in the bushes caused her to dismiss the mirror as we turned towards the record. Starlight stepped through, holding a small block of ice to her forehead as she limped Hard to walk with 3 legs, but doable. "Did it work?" she asked with a wince. Yes. He's quite well in hoof, as you can see." The nightmare snuffed out the fire that had been venting from us. I was sad-facing from within. They really had planned the entire thing from the start. Maybe David's last name really was Xanatos after all. "Good to know I didn't take a kick to the face for nothing," she grumped as she approached, looking us over. "Not bad for a clown and parasite combination." "Enough prattle!" Azure Flora emerged from the shrubbery. It was nice shrubbery. "Our task is done. Where's Trixie?" "Right here." Trixie also walked from the foliage. What followed her was a floating, unconscious apple bloom. "Good to see you've tied up that loose end," the nightmare said with a worried smirk. "It would have been annoying to have that "No!" I snapped. They had apple bloom. I threw every ounce of my will into the fight. Perhaps it says something about me that I didn't even try when it was just me on the line, but with apple bloom in danger, I wasn't about to just lie down and take it. Anything I could do, kick, scream, tear down the metaphorical walls, recite Vogan poetry. It was working somewhat, as it seemed to make my body seize up and fell to its knees. The nightmare fought back, but have you ever tried to physically stop someone from wrecking a room? If they are not actively fighting against you, then it turns out to be extremely difficult. So yeah, like that. She was able to keep me slightly contained, but not much more than that. "Get Trixie! Open the portal!" she gasped through my mouth. I have no way to easily convey or describe how things were going nor how it was being done, but I can say I was so enraged that I wasn't actually fighting for control. I was just causing mayhem, making it hard for her to do anything. I don't think I could have truly ever wrestled control back, but I could certainly make it difficult to do anything at all. I wasn't actually paying attention, but somewhere along the line I remember a portal opening nearby, and the others dragging us through it. It was kinda like having a TV off to the side that's playing loudly, but you're still not paying attention to it, even though you're forced to get the gist of what was happening. The nightmare kept trying to suppress me and was all shocked that it wasn't working. Didn't care though. Just wanted to make it suffer, and I was doing a good job. Hell, maybe if I kept this up on a long enough timeline, she'd move out. "David!" my mouth cried. Get him out!" "What's wrong with her?" Trixie and Azure Flora were keeping their distance, unsure of what would happen. I was suddenly paying attention again. My head lifted up from the ground. I would have taken it in my surroundings if I were in control of my eyes, but instead I was forced to look up at David as he approached. He peered down at us before crouching, his brow furrowing inquisitively. He raised an eyebrow before mumbling. "Can you not control him?" No! My mouth sputtered as the nightmare took advantage of my distraction to gain better control. "He's not sleeping like Luna, Celestia." "Then it seems I did a pretty good job protecting him against you," David muttered with an apprehensive nod. "Very well." "You what?" The nightmare cried, and no longer fighting back. Hell, even I did a double take. "He what?" He then reached out, touching my nose with his finger. I remember a bright flash and suddenly being thrown back. It was an odd tingling sensation that he had afflicted with me, but when I looked up, I instantly realized that I was no longer contending for control of my body. I stood up and began to inhale for a wave of fire before spotting my body still on the ground in front of David. It was panting in a relieved sort of way, as though it had just gone through a successful surgery. It lifted its head to look at me before gazing back at David. "What?" I instinctively scratched at my head before realizing I was only using 2 legs to hold myself up. Then it hit me.
You—"
I lifted my hand and paled when I saw the 5 fingers attached to a palm. To be honest, I don't know how I felt about having my old body back. However, I knew a certain alicorn that was going to take issue with it.
"Quite a shock,"
David said with a smirk before lifting his hand.
"Nothing a bit of rest can take care of. In fact, I think it would do both of you some good."
My old pony body suddenly passed out before it had a chance to respond. Had I been less distracted, I would have reacted in a self-preserving manner. As it was, though, I was still freaking out at the fact that I got my thumbs back. When David turned his power on me, I felt incredibly dizzy and stumbled about aimlessly as I tried to fight off the overpowering sense of fatigue.
"Oh man, you're so screwed,"
I slurred rebelliously before falling to my knees and slumping onto my side.
"Luna's gonna kill you for this."
And then I took a nap, quite possibly the nicest nap I've ever had.